So I think I would really add value in strengthening the board and making sure that, there is proper oversight of the board, as well as, of course, maintaining independence of the board. But I think also more important.
I now move to Honorable Kola Banat. You are recognized. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, Advocate. A couple of questions. You have, looking at your CV, vast experience in the human rights field. Do you have experience in terms of media communications, journalists, electronic media platforms, etc.? I'm interested in, whether the interaction has been there, whether the experience is there. On a similar line, you will have read a great deal, I'm sure, about the sacking of the head of news, who was then exonerated by the CCMA. Your thoughts on that and what was perhaps behind that? What would you personally change at the SABC, or what changes would you stop from happening, perhaps, especially in the run-up to the 2024 election? Now, SABC today competes in a very difficult and competitive environment. What are your thoughts on what's happened over the past, say, year, where over 600 staff members were retrenched, their terms of employment changed, which made it impossible for them to stay, and now they're advertising for over 400 members, new members. The claim is from some that this is to look for different expertise. I'm not sure why there was no training in this regard, but it's an interesting exercise. I don't know that it hasn't contributed to the lack of content and the dropping of audiences. I'd like your input on that one. And,
thank you.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't quite done. And give us your plan. This is my last one, I promise. Give us your plan on how you would financially turn the SABC around. It's, as ever, in a massive debt situation, and as ever looking for further bailouts. So tell me what you would do differently that may turn the situation around. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, what has happened really to an institution which has been established way back in 1936, which definitely has one of the biggest media footprints in the country and the continent, it's quite unfortunate. And we do need a very healthy and viable and reliable public broadcast in our country. And of course, also as a means of revenue generation, of course. So clearly, we need to do a lot to reverse the tide where we've been running at the loss. I was checking the last annual report that, we had a loss of over 600 million rands. And there's been a decline in the loss of advert revenue, TV licenses, and all these issues really relate to a loss of faith and trust in the institution, and therefore people will go elsewhere. So if you look at the media industry, you have products like Netflix, which are basically canning it. And yet SABC should actually be there competing in view of the massive footprints, as I was saying it has. I mean, look at the radio coverage of SABC, Lesedi, Motswedi, and other stuff like that. Even the TV light channels, as well, of course, our standing in the continent shows there is a massive potential for the SABC to really turn things around and really be a very vibrant institution, which will also be financially sustainable. So we do need to address the issues of leadership, issues of consequence management, issues of staff morale in the organization. If you look at the reports, you look at the issue of the unfair dismissal of the head of news, that also saps the morale, because without happy people, without good human resource management, without skilled staff members, institutions die. But that also depends also on leadership of the board and management. And of course, that institution must also be allowed to run according to the dictates of the laws and not be influenced by political parties and whims, as we saw in the past, also highlighted in the report. So that's what we need to do. We need to protect the entity of the institution. And I want to say that, having spent over 10 years in South African Human Rights Commission, we are an independent institutions, one has gained experience in how to ensure these issues happen. Now, I have had media experiences. As I was saying, when I was in New York, I was a radio producer for 2 years for a radio station there, which was covering African news. But I've also been a consumer of the media products of SABC. I've done many interviews on numerous channels of SABC TV or radio, and I follow what's happening there. But also, I mean, as a Democrat, definitely one appreciates the importance of public information. So SABC does provide information about governance, about what's happening to the country. It also creates a forum where people can engage, because we need that in order to enhance our democracy. So some of the issues which we really have to look into for the future is the whole issue of digitization. Definitely the world is changing, and the channel, the SABC also has to be in line with what's happening. I see with, for example, one of in the reports, one of the concerns, of course, is the issue of the TV licenses, and the proposal that, should actually change that funding model, that, every South African who must get funding through levies instead of being linked to whether you own a TV set or not. Definitely that's one thing, something one will support. But certainly, we need to think towards the future, and how then do we take into account the changing environment in order to be able to transmit very good products, which will then generate revenue and put SABC on a clear path of financial sustainability. But it's crucial that the issues of governance, leadership, staff morale are addressed, and also that there's a commitment to continuously produce a good product, which can then be appreciated by the market, by the consumers, and therefore we get rewarded for that. And that's why Netflix is becoming so successful. And one also has to look at, what can we learn from entities like Netflix in order to ensure we survive, at the same time being true to the fact that we are indeed a public broadcaster. We still have to, unlike Netflix, we still have to service people all over the country without focusing only on making money out of that. But at the same time, that's why the mixture of the commercial and then public becomes quite a useful one. And I think SABC is actually the best place to turn things around with right leadership. But also, I think it will be important that Parliament also and government protects SABC and really see SABC as a goose which lays a golden egg. It has to be protected. It's quite viable for the future. It creates jobs. It creates so many things. It's also quite crucial for social cohesion. But also, more importantly, we do need to increase the footprint of SABC in the Southern African region, as well as in Africa as a whole. There's no reason why we should not be competing with BBC and CNN or all these other international agencies. We can, as African people, do that. I hope I've covered many parts of the issues. The issue of the head of SABC is actually quite unfortunate, because it also highlights, the challenges in the organization, where we just, abuse our powers and get rid of people without very good reasons, so to speak. We have to do our work without fear, favor, and also independently. And put South Africa first.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Kola Barnett. I saw Honorable Majosi, your hand was up. Honorable Pambo, do you also want to be recognized? I see your mic is open.
I thought, let me come in. Thanks, Mr. Chibedi. And
Right.
I think it's quite interesting.
You can come in, Honorable Pambo, whilst I try to.
Am I audible?
Honorable Majosi. Yeah, yes, you're audible. You can proceed.
There is about 800 million rand set aside for content production, purely set aside, which was never used. This is money that the SABC was allocated. The previous report that we had three meetings ago indicated as such. And this is in view of the advert revenue that you've made note of, the 600 million rands that we've lost, there's an audience drop. With all these challenges that are facing the SABC, should we not be calling for the rolling of heads in this regard? I mean, if we can remove, mere staff members as an excuse of a turnaround strategy of the SABC, even when that is done, 621 people lost their jobs. And yet the SABC has not shown any significant, signs of turning around. The management is clearly not affected. And now we're dealing with the board. Shouldn't we be changing our focus and not solely, blaming the staff and focus on the leadership of the SABC? Because it looks like they are immune, both management and the board. I would just want to hear you speak openly and what you would do differently, as opposed to always, using the staff as a scapegoat. As you rightfully said, the SABC is not an entity to make profit. All we need from the SABC is to serve our people, to make sure that it gives our people as much information as possible. But equally, we just need it to be self-sufficient, to break even. We don't expect profits from the SABC. That is not what we want from the SABC. We want the SABC to employ as many people as possible, but to be able to carry itself and still to be number one, not only in the country, but in the continent. But it's clear that it's not purely the challenge with the staff, but it is clear that it's also management and the board, which has essentially failed, to steer this entity into the right direction. I would like you to say a little bit more on that, and don't be scared of anything. Speak openly, sir.
Thank you, sir. Honorable member, I'm a constitutional lawyer and corporate governance lawyer. And it's very clear, it starts and ends with leadership and corporate governance. So we can blame, to a large extent, the problems of SABC on leadership and governance. And therefore, we should be blaming, to a large extent, or 90%, the board and management of the institution. SABC has got a tremendous potential, not to be, and should not be retrenching people, but should actually be employing more people, because we can increase the footprint of the institution in the country as well as in the continent. And therefore, the new board really has to look at the reports of the Auditor General, the reports of Zondo Commission, and see what needs to be done to restore the SABC and actually put it at the highest level it could be. We should be one of the top 10 leading media houses in the world. CNN, BBC, that is very, very possible if we look at the footprint and we look at the potential. We just have to fix the leadership and the board and management. And as I'm saying, we need to appreciate that this is about our country, it's about our democracy, it's about our people, and therefore the SABC and those who are involved in SABC should bear this in mind, that this is actually for the people of this country and the continent, and whatever we do is out of service. And therefore we should do our work without fear and favor to make sure that SABC is indeed one of the shining institutions in the continent and in the world globally. It is possible, very, very much possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pambo. I'm sure the ground has been covered.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, may I then look at Honorable Majosi, because I saw you opening your mic again. You can proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm not sure if you are far from the mic or it is just the volume in your gadget that needs adjustment. Can you speak now so that we hear if there's improvement?
Can you hear me now? My volume is very high, by the way.
Yeah, better now? Better
I am
now, wherever you are standing now better. I'm sure,
okay.
advocate, you can also hear now better. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon to Advocate Deliso. Am I correct? Um, my question would be one. Bringing your expertise from private sector and worked in different institutions. What expertise will you bring into the board to make sure that you reach a consensus, even if you would have different ideologies about whatever, or different ideas on an issue that you'll be talking about, making sure that you are able to lobby one another and speak about that issue, so that when you come out, you speak as one, and the public and coming to parliament, we do not see a board that is divided. What is it? What expertise will you bring if you are appointed to be a board member, to make sure that you always reach that consensus, and when you come to the public and parliament, you come as one board?
Thank you. I've had the opportunity of being the CEO of the Human Rights Commission for 2 terms, in 2005 to 2009 and 2017 up until this year. And I have always helped to turn around the institution every time I found it in a terrible situation. And I think my record speaks for itself. What I bring to the institutions I work in, it's passion and commitment to the well-being of our people and our country. And of course, my skills in terms of corporate governance, being a lawyer, having done my pupillage a few years ago, being a social activist, somebody who's also keen on the media, is what I bring to institutions, and to remind colleagues that we can do this. We need to make our people to believe in themselves, to love the institution, and then you can see what will happen. SABC 2-3 years from now will be a different institution from what we have. If the right board members are appointed and the right senior managers are appointed, it's doable. It has been done before. Institutions can turn around. Institutions can also die. And I think after so many years, one has a good idea what causes institutions to die and what causes institutions to thrive. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Matrosi.
Yes, thank you so much, Chairperson. I don't have a follow-up.
I take it that I may not be leaving any member who would want to pose questions. So if no member left, just to go back to a point, if you can just go back to it and clarify. You mentioned the issue about roles, staying on the line, and made mention of the board, the executive, the minister, and ourselves, parliament. And as you know, there's an unavoidable tension that arises from time to time, as you would have seen on a number of issues, whether it was at the time of implementation of Section 189, which Honorable Pambo spoke about, the retrenchment and so on, where stakeholders may not be at the same level in terms of what needs to be done. What would you say would be the contribution that you make if you were to be considered, just in making this understanding that we play different roles, yes, but the objective may be the same as far as getting the public broadcaster to do what it's to do. So that's one. Yeah, that's one issue there that I thought should go back to, maybe just to clarify more. But just taking also advantage that you've got experience from the human rights side of things. because you've emphasized more of the revenue side, getting the advertisements and so on. What would you say would be also better ways of ensuring, especially a platform that needs to not only entertain people, but educate and inform them? How the human rights issues also could be something to look at. We've seen complaints about many of some of the adverts that made their way to the public, raising problems. So if you can just speak to those two, I wanted to hear you well there. Thank you.
Thank you. The name of my institution is called Southern African Institute for Responsive and Accountable Governance. That, you know, all of us who are in leadership have to bear in mind that we have to be responsive and accountable. And I think that is one of the biggest challenges in our country of corporate governance. And therefore, by corporate governance, basically, it's how different structures, the different players in any institutions or in any terrain play their roles, and respecting the roles of other people in order to achieve the common objective of a viable, caring, and effective institution. So I think there needs to be a better understanding by everybody in terms of, you know, what is SABC, how it's supposed to be run, and who plays what role. So the confusion of roles where maybe people outside the institution want to run it, or those inside the institution want to run it, has to be addressed. So there has to be a healthy relationship in SABC between the board, management, and the staff. Staff are very important. Without the staff, there's no SABC. At the same time, both at two levels, management and the board, need to understand this. And therefore, one would really hope that, you know, Parliament itself, when it appoints board members, will take this into account, that we need to appoint people with vision, people with commitment, people with track record, who can help to turn institution around. And of course, not to be scared to make mistakes, but also own up when they've made those mistakes and correct them. That is the nature of how life goes. And I think it is very possible if all of us were to appreciate that, you know, we are here to serve the Republic and our people, not ourselves, not our political interests or anything else, but the people of this country. And we can compete with CNN and BBC, as I've said earlier on. Now, coming to the latter part, yes, SABC plays a very important role. And one might be very controversial to say some of the problems we're seeing in our country today in terms of social cohesion, declining morality, is because the public broadcaster itself has not done its role properly in informing South Africans what is our responsibility as citizens in terms of how we relate to each other, how we respect our constitution, how do we hold people to account. And therefore, you know, SABC can play this role, both educative, entertainment, as well as, you know, creating a space for dialogue with our people, so that at least our people understand what is going on. So we also need to review whether we're actually playing this role properly in terms of providing entertainment and educating. But at the end of the day, it's all about ensuring that our republic, our democracy is stable and grows. And also those who are in positions of power, whether in private or public, are held to account in order to ensure that our country does get better. So I strongly believe that SABC can be turned around and be one of the shining leaders lights in our country and the continent. It's doable. It's in our hands.
Thank you, Advocate Panyan. Now we're in that time, the 3 minutes, for you to speak to the committee before we wrap up. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. The Chair and honorable members, as I was saying earlier on, I definitely believe that with the right leadership and right support of Parliament and the executive and our people and business, SABC is a public institution. It belongs to all of us. It creates space, opportunities for everybody in the country, whether they are public or private. It's also here to strengthen our constitutional democracy, and also as a forum to hold everyone to account. And I think, you know, with the right leadership and vision, we can also check what's happening all over the world and copy and adapt to become a leading institution. I think we are a wonderful country and well-placed to be the leader in the continent and in the globe. I think Africa needs a major institution like ours, which will also play a leading role in global media communication. We can't just be relying on CNN, BBC here, and Al Jazeera when we have something which can actually show the whole world what we can do, infusing media and communication with principles of Ubuntu. And I mean, the whole world has been looking up to us. And I think people are getting disappointed. You know, in 1994, there were high expectations that we will lead by example with all the past experience we have. And I think SABC also falls in that category. So it is doable. I sincerely believe this, and I'm really hoping and praying that yourselves as honorable members of this committee will make the right decision and appoint people who can really serve SABC and not people who are simply politically aligned or self-sitting agendas. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Panane. This then takes us to the end of this engagement. And from where one is sitting, surely the set objectives, as I indicated earlier, would have been achieved in that from your sharing with the members, your experiences in response to the questions would have learned from that. And surely the questions themselves would keep you reflecting even beyond the session. Having said that, as I say once again, thank you for making your time here as nominated and shortlisted by the committee. We really appreciate that. Just on the formality side, for any questions or queries that you may still have regarding the process, administratively, it will still be the support staff that you are engaging in preparation for this interview. But with regard to the decision-making process, as you would be aware, that all our meetings are open to the public. So you can be one of the followers of the committee from now on if you have not been, to see how the process unfolds, because there's transparency about the process. But we really appreciate that you came, and we really thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair, and may the force be with you.
Thank you. So would, as we offload you, ask the administration to also get the next candidate ready. Thank you, Advocate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. The next candidate is on the platform. The name is Mr. Quentin Green. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Green. Do you hear us? Mr. Green, if you can hear us, you can unmute and switch on your video camera.
Good afternoon.
But I see that the mic is not connected, so your audio is not connected from what I see on the platform.
I'm shown as unmuted here, Chairperson.
Can you hear?
I can hear him clearly, Chair.
Okay, so if you can switch on your video camera so that we're able to also see you.
It's on, Chair. There he is.
Why am I not? Yes, now we can see you. I can see you now.
There we are.
Okay, so please feel welcomed. You are now appearing before a subcommittee.
Thank you, Chair.
Of the Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies. In terms of the rules of the National Assembly, a committee can set up a subcommittee to focus on a particular task and report back to the committee. So we are a subcommittee that's dealing with the appointment process for the SABC board, for which you've been nominated and shortlisted for, hence you are before the subcommittee. But just to briefly indicate that the subcommittee is constituted by different political parties proportional to the size in terms of the electoral support for in terms of the 2019 election. So it's quite a representative committee in nature. So just to outline how we are going to proceed, we have set up 45 minutes per candidate, but we also are quite practical that the 45 minutes may be less depending on the engagement, but there may be a spillover of some sort, given the answers that members in the interaction may want to get from a candidate. But as a rule, we look at 45 minutes. In that 45 minutes, it will be the brief introduction of the members of the committee who are on the platform, as well as giving you 5 minutes after that to briefly introduce yourself, which will also give you an opportunity to talk to your skills, expertise, and so on, or any matter you want the committee to consider as the reason for you to be considered for recommendation to the SABC board. After that 5 minutes, we'll then get to the members. We've allocated about 5 minutes per member to interact with you in terms of questions, as well as your responses. Of course, once members are done, if there's any matter to highlight, that's the only time the chair may ask a question. Otherwise, if the ground is covered, I will then get straight to you to do the 3 minutes your closing points before we officially close the session. So we take this as a conversation we're having with you or engagement. We try to put the word interview on the side so that you relax, you share your experiences with the committee, and the committee can learn from what you share, as well as you also drawing lessons from the questions that members would ask. More importantly for us is because we're playing an oversight role on the entity. So we would need to look at some of the things that get raised even beyond this period of so-called interviews. So I hope that makes you to relax a bit and wait for the engagement. So without a waste of time, let me then go to members, as I said, briefly introduce them, starting with the African National Congress. I will start with the Honorable Dr. Basso.
Thank you,
Good
Chairperson.
afternoon, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Green.
All right, that's the Honorable Dr. Basso. And Honorable Mulala, still on the platform. Honorable Mulala.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Malala. Nice to meet you.
So that's Honorable Mulala. Honorable Maneli, from the NC, as well as the chair of the subcommittee. Let me then introduce the Honorable Kola Barnett from the Democratic Alliance. I'm sure you can.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have from the Economic Freedom Fighters, Honorable Pambo.
Good
Thank you
afternoon,
very
Mr.
much,
Malala.
Chair. We're here.
Thank you, Honorable Pambo. Honorable Majosi from the Inkatha Freedom Party, FP. Honorable Majosi.
Yes, Chairperson, I'm here.
You're still here. Thank you. So we
Good
do
afternoon,
have
Mr. President.
Honorable Mtembu may join us, but we have an indication of challenges on our side. But we do have the numbers to proceed accordingly. And for that reason, we would proceed. As I said, that's the brief introduction of the members. We now come to you. You have 5 minutes to really briefly introduce yourself. And as I said, members will then take questions thereafter, which may not be limited to the 5 minutes brief introduction, because they've had an opportunity of looking at your detailed CV, and the questions may therefore go beyond that. But over to you, Mr. Green, please.
Thank you, Chairperson, for this opportunity to present myself to the committee. And thank you to all the other committee members as well for your time in undertaking this important task. I'm Quinton Green. I'm a father with 2 children, a son who is a lawyer in Johannesburg and a daughter who's an actuary in the United Arab Emirates, currently doing significant work for the government of Saudi Arabia. They're my pride and joy. My careers, I matriculated at St. John's College in Johannesburg. I attended subsequently the University of Cape Town, where I obtained a BCom degree, and I subsequently obtained my certificate in theory of accountancy and my chartered accountancy qualification at the University of the Witwatersrand. I articled with Alex Aiken and Carter, and after brief spells with Anglo-American, Hendler and Sassel, I was called to join the SABC in the late 1980s, 1989 to be exact, when the SABC was undergoing very severe financial problems similar to now. I was appointed as Director General Finance and Administration. I was responsible for all marketing activities of the entire SABC, both television and radio. I was responsible for human relations. I was responsible for the finance and administration of the entire SABC. The SABC, some 18 months later, went into restructuring, and I was appointed as Chief Executive of Television, responsible at that time for 2 SABC channels, SABC 1, SABC 2 and 3, which, as you will recall, split at night into SABC 4 at 9 o'clock at night. I found that an unacceptable situation, and so we discontinued SABC TV4 on the networks of TV2 and 3 and created a separate network of its own, which we were able to do given the overlap of transmitters. We were very, very successful in restoring the financial stability of the SABC, and during those early years of Mnet transmissions as well, we were still able to grow our financial revenue base through advertising. We established a very, very good relationship with the advertisers and also proceeded with affirmative action campaigns. I'm proud to have appointed Mr. Madala Mpashlele as the first general manager of what was then TV2, which became CCV TV. I appointed the first senior woman employee, Ms. Brenda Kournier, who is today my partner. And I appointed Mr. Talib Sadek, who subsequently became the managing director of Armscor, of Denel, not Armscor. And we proceeded with that policy of employing people from across the spectrum in South Africa. I'm very proud of our achievements there. But more importantly, because the SABC's role is to represent broader South Africa and not merely the employees of the SABC, we proceeded to embark on a broadening of the programming spectrum within South Africa. I'm honored today that Generations was my baby. I commissioned it after meeting Mfundi Wundler way back in the early 90s, and I'm delighted to see that it's still the #2 rated program audience-wise on SABC 1, only beaten by Zalo, and I'm sure one day Generations, the legacy, will regain its place. I also started People of the South, which we contracted to Dali Tambo at the time. I commissioned a program called The Line, which was very controversial at its time, given the political history in South Africa. And we commissioned the first independent news program at the SABC called Future Imperfect under Dr. Dennis Davis. I'm also delighted that we could have brought in Felicia Mabusa-Suttle to start her Felicia program. So that is my history on the SABC. Very briefly, subsequent to that, I left the SABC to lead a consortium bid for the first private free-to-air television license. We regrettably lost it, despite our very good shareholding, I believe. I have subsequently led a television network across 23 countries in Africa called Television Africa, and I'm proud that I was able to assist Telkom in getting their satellite transmission license, which they've regrettably not used. Subsequent to that, I joined the city of Johannesburg and have for the last 5 years, up until my retirement in 2018, been on the board of City Power as CFO of City Power. I think, Chair, that completes my 5 minutes, and I hand back to the committee. Thank you once again for that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I would now identify members, recognize those that would want to come in terms of questions. I see Honorable Kolabanat, Honorable Mulala. We'll take those. Honorable Dr. Basso will be free. I will take those in the meantime, whilst we check if there are further hands. Honorable Kolabanat.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again. You do, looking at your CV and listening to you, you have vast experience in many areas of media communications, dealing with journalists, electronic media platforms, TV, etc., and programming. So looking at the SABC now, with its massive loss, what would be your plan to turn the finances around? And what is your opinion of this suggestion that the TV licenses, which apparently nobody pays anymore, should be turned into some sort of levy for all, so that everybody, even if they didn't have a TV, would have to pay a license? I can see that being something of an issue. Then your thoughts, you would have read about it, heard about it. What are your thoughts on the sacking of the head of news, who was then exonerated in the CCMA? And what would you change within the SABC or prevent from happening as we hit the run into the 2024 election? And perhaps also your comments on the recent axing of so much expertise with the 600 staff laid off or forced out through changes in their job descriptions, and now the subsequent hiring of well over 400. And I'm told it's to pull in more relevant expertise, but I'd like your opinion on what was done, because it seems that the massive lack of skills now has perhaps exacerbated the lack of content and the dropping listener and viewership levels. I think I'm covered for now. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. Kolabanat.
Sorry, Mr. Green, just to clarify so that we can have a flow. I have no intentions of coming in between to give to you. It will just be interactive as such. So you can proceed. That was what happened even with the next speaker.
Thanks so much, Chairperson, and thank you, Ms. Kolabanat, for those questions. The first question that you raised was about turning around the finances of the SABC. I obviously have not yet seen the 2022 financial statements of the SABC, but I've certainly seen the 2021 financial statements. The grave concern there is the statement by the Auditor General that there is material uncertainty relating to the going concern of the SABC. So obviously a great deal of attention has to be paid by the board to turning around those finances. I think the first thing of concern to me is that when one looks at the audience ratings of the SABC, and one looks at all the channels in South Africa, not a single channel, not a single program in the SABC 3 top 20 programs for August has higher ratings than that of ETV. And of the top 20 programs on SABC 2 in August, only one falls into the list of the top 20 programs in ETV. Now, if one is not getting top-rated programs or better-rated programs than are being attained at the moment, then one is not going to attract the advertising revenue. It's simply as that. Advertisers look for numbers of people to advertise to. So the SABC is going to have to get up the audience numbers. And the only way to do that is going to have to be to attract South Africans by quality programming. That means that a far greater share of the income of the SABC has to be devoted to programming, which to some extent answers your question about the forcing out of employees. One has to be careful that expenditure on internal salaries is not so high that it's to the extent where you have no money for programming. So I think one always, and as the board, one has to manage the staff numbers very carefully and make sure one retains the relevant skills. So I think one has to look at that ratio between programming costs and human resource costs very, very carefully. I obviously am not party to the decisions about taking out staff and then re-employing them. So one is not aware of the full motivation there, but I think it's very important to keep those numbers under control. After all, the television station, as well as radio networks, want their money to go into programming. That is what is sold. And right now, the SABC revenue on television is only at 28.7% of total revenue, whereas multi-choices is at 49.8%. And if one compares the SABC audiences to that of multi-choice, the total multi-choice portfolio, the SABC revenue streams are not reflective of what the SABC should be getting against its audiences. Jay, in terms of the coming up of the election, I think one has to be very careful there to work together in conjunction with the Independent Electoral Commission. There are always going to be arguments about elections as to how much time each political party gets. And I think the SABC there needs to follow the lead provided by the International Election Committee. And there's always the ongoing debate is how much airtime should one party get against the other. I think very often one ignores the fact that one has to treat government as separate from the political party in that government and look at things on that basis. So I think that a large deal of guidance needs to be provided by the Independent Electoral Commission. We fortunately had that in the '94 election, which worked very, very successfully and well. We also had advice at that stage from the Commonwealth Broadcasting Association. In terms of the termination of services of the head of news and her subsequent reinstatement, I think that is regrettable. But again, not being party to the inner information regarding all of that, it's difficult to understand and provide a view as to how the initial decision was taken and how it was subsequently reversed. I certainly think that the board needs to provide a lot of support and protection for the head of news, particularly in the South African environment. It is an extremely difficult place within which to operate. Ms. Barnard, I'm hoping that's answered the questions as you put them to me. Thank you.
I have just to say that the head of news was not reinstated. Someone else was put in the position. And from what I gather, she was paid out and not returned. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Barnard. As I said, I have recognized Honorable Malala. Can proceed.
Sure.
Who would be followed by Honorable Dr. Basop.
Chairperson?
Yes, Honorable Bambo.
No, Chair, unless the speakers that have already raised their hands are bringing something of the same issue, can I please be indulged in sort of picking up from what is already the topic right now, if that is in order?
I think Honorable Mlala, if you were to ask a different question, not following up, he would be ready to now, like he did last night, and then get to his points, which will then take us to other questions to ask. Honorable Mlala. you are amenable to that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I wanted to follow up as well and then raise another question.
No, that's
Okay.
fine.
No, you
That's
can
fine.
then get in, Honorable Mlala.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. I think maybe as a follow-up, you spoke a lot about the top rating programs on ETV, which is much higher in terms of percentage than the SABC. You also responded on the issue of how you will improve the finances. But you also noted the annual report for the last financial year. And in that annual report, there's a high regular expenditure, which I thought you'll also comment about. There's also a high salary bill that is of concern, even after retrenchments, which for me says, even though they have retrenched with the view of reducing the high salary bill, is still there, which means they might have miscalculated there. So I would also want you to comment on that. That would be my first follow-up questions. Now, my questions will be around the commercial arm of the SABC, because you've been in the SABC before. Surely you know what I'm talking about. What is the contributory percentage of that commercial arm in terms of the public mandate? Because it looks like this commercial arm is not used for purpose from where I'm sitting. Now, what would be your views on how you have been dealing with it during your tenure at SABC? And then the last question is around, as a board member, surely you will have to manage the relation between the board, between the stakeholder, between the administration, including the portfolio committee. What would be your advice in that regard? How would you manage those relations? Because many a times there's some subtle tension between the key role players, which in my view might be contributory to the instability in the SABC. Thanks, Chair. I think those are my questions.
Honorable Mlala, as I would be going to Mr. Green, just make sure you correct. I didn't want members to raise it as point of order and therefore dislodge you from the flow. So I won't do it when you appear again. Just make sure you correct your background, that we do not display party logos.
Yeah, I think the Chair is wearing the wrong jacket, Chair, please.
That's a point I'm making. Papa, I didn't want you to.
No, but Bambo is wearing the red beret. Why?
No. I know you even see it when I'm not wearing it, but I'm not wearing it, unfortunately, my brother.
No, he was not wearing it. So, but I'm just saying, Honorable Mlala, I didn't want for us to degenerate to a point of order instead of focusing on the work at hand. So you've corrected it, and we can be able to proceed. Make sure that you don't bring it, and it then exposed you as you were talking to political parties, and it came like big. I'm sure, Mr. Green, you would ignore that and just get to the question.
Thanks, Chair. I took it from Honorable Bambo, is my good friend. Thanks.
Okay, no, thank you. we can then proceed. We'll keep your time, Mr. Green. I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't get to be the issue, but we focus on what we are dealing with. Over to you.
Thank you again, Chairperson, and thank you, Mr. Malala, for those questions. I did neglect to answer one question posed by Ms. Cola Barnard, and that related to the TV licenses. The current TV license system continues, as is for many years, to be impossible to implement. It is basically a tax, and taxes have to be collectible and they have to be affordable. And the current system has failed. So we definitely need another system of collection. However, my one thought is that we must make sure that we do not capture the poorest South Africans in a net whereby they have to pay. I think we have a responsibility as South Africans to look after the poorest members of our community. So whatever system we implement, there has to be a way of subsidizing the poorest members of our community so that they can get TV services and radio services without a cost to them. It's very important that we continue to communicate with the poorest and most underprivileged members of our community. I apologize for that, Mr. Malala. You questioned about the high salary bill. I think that the SABC on an ongoing basis has to undertake a personal audit to make sure that the staff numbers do not exceed the absolute bare minimum as what is required to manage the SABC. And that is important so that we can generate far more money into programming, whether for radio or for television. But that is where the SABC needs to put its finances, on the screen and on the microphone in radio. We have to do that. Your next question related to the commercialization of the SABC. I think to come back to my point, the SABC is currently licensed for 2 public service channels, SABC 1 and 2, and 1 commercial channel, which is SABC 3. Yet SABC 3 is performing with audience rating points far below those of SABC 1 and 2. So it's not achieving its objective as a commercial channel at all. It should be outperforming ETV. From what I can, from my understanding of the industry, the SABC has all the facilities to make it possible for SABC 3 to do that. I think all 3 channels, and particularly the commercial channel, need to invest far more in local content. So we get back to the days where we have programs such as Good as Nicey, R&A, and very, very similar programs like that, where we attracted the audiences every single night to SABC, not to Mnet at that stage. So I think we should get I apologize, we should get the SABC back up to being the lead competitor in the commercial television and radio market. There is no reason why that can't be obtained. It has the frequencies, it has the networks, it has the distribution systems. We just need to get performance, and that means our programming and ad revenue. I think one has always got cross-subsidization in South Africa. That will depend on the extent to which one can bring back the profitability of the commercial services. But there should be no doubt that the commercial service is necessary to subsidize the public services. That is very, very important to do so, because the public service has a responsibility not only to serve the smaller communities in South Africa, but should also be the innovator and lead programmer. So it should be experimenting with new programming in South Africa, sometimes which is not going to be affordable. And it is going to have to look at all sorts of art programs, which are not always the most popular. In addition to that, the SABC commercial channels are going to have to generate the funds for the SABC to again become competitive in the bidding for sports rights. It is not acceptable that the biggest broadcaster in South Africa is constantly losing sport rights, which appeal to them and which are a unifying factor for the bulk of South Africans. We need to address that commercialization to generate funds for South Africa. Your last question, Mr. Malala, related to the relationship between the board and other stakeholder groups, of which the portfolio committee and politicians are one. I think the important fact for the board to act on here is that it is a public service broadcaster. It is not a state broadcaster. And it needs to constantly sell that role, that it is there to represent stakeholder groups beyond that of Parliament. It has to represent stakeholder groups in every aspect of our society, whether rich, poor, irrespective of the religious group, the racial group, the gender group. And also it's got to represent the groups, no matter how little importance they may be in the bigger scheme of things. I think it's important. And the leaders must contribute towards helping that understanding as well. I think we got there at one stage in the history of the SABC, and I'm sure it's not going to be very difficult given the current communication which is coming from all parties. But the SABC has to exert its role as a public service broadcaster and not that of a state broadcaster. I hope, Mr. Malala, that answers your questions.
Honorable Malala, covered.
I think you can give Pambo now to do a follow-up unless I covered it. Thanks.
You almost,
Mr.
Mr.
You
Malala.
can then come in, Honorable Pambo. I'm sure you collected the parade.
No, thanks, Chair. I think Mr. Malala almost covered me, and I think maybe let me ask our candidate to expand a little bit. You know, I think there's a lot of things that one would agree with. You're right. Commercialization of the SABC is obviously not the answer, or does not appear to be the answer. And in the examples that you have given of a station which ought to be outperforming given you know, its commercialization. But you are quite correct when you say that the SABC is no longer attracting audiences and it's not giving fresh content. All of it is stale repetition. So bad that even on the news, you have a repetition of news when so much is happening in this country. There is obviously a challenge with management there. There is a challenge with the board, and we're renewing it now. And partly you will have, I mean, let's take, for example, this year has been characterized by conferences from all political parties. And the EFF, for example, was having a conference this past weekend, you know, in the, what we call the People's Assembly. We had at the SABC repeating news when the majority of South Africans, the people of South Africa and the people in the continent wanted to see what was happening. We're the third biggest political party in this country. And yet the, you know, a public broadcaster was repeating news with the head of news refusing, saying that this is an editorial decision with no criteria being presented to us as to why we're not being covered. Where you had the ANC being covered throughout, from people parading with big jackets of the big wigs of the ANC. Nothing significant or interesting to the people of South Africa, but by them just getting off the car, they will be followed with cameras all the way into the conference room. The EFF nowhere to be seen on one of the biggest assemblies. That is one. There is 800 million rands that is there with the SABC. That is not being used for content, set aside for content. There was no need for deviation. There was no need for anything. That is money that is there. This speaks to bad decision making. Again, if you think about in the background of what the SABC has done with 621 staff, which was retrenched, some of which the SABC admits it even got rid of people who had experience and were still needed. Now we're going back to employing about 400 employees to the SABC. All of this speaks to, you know, bad leadership and bad decision making. It can't be that every time when there's a situation, there's a problem, we always speak to, you know, the staff complement as the easy scapegoat that does not have a voice. The protest that we saw of journalists of the SABC live on national television was embarrassing. People crying for their jobs, senior journalists who were victimized, and we could all see it. Now we know of the head of news who was fired and was paid for a process that was not properly followed. She's not the only one, there are many. That speaks to bad decision-making by the ANC management and subsequently to the board. And I'm putting this to you for you to speak openly about it, but also to say what needs to happen. Shouldn't heads roll? Shouldn't this board that we are appointing now zoom into the management of this entity and make sure that we start from management, not just jump into the question of balancing the salary bill. We said we're balancing the salary bill. Look at where we are now. Maybe this management is overpaid. Maybe the money we give the management has clouded their judgment and they're not thinking clear and they don't have the interest of the SABC. And every time when there's a challenge, they blame the staff complement, which is not capable. I think openly that the problem might be with the management, and we must be then starting to zoom into who is actually doing what in that SABC. Your response, sir.
Thanks very much indeed, Mr. Pamba, for your questions and your insightful questions there. I think with regards to your first point about news coverage, the newsroom at the SABC should only have one criteria, and that's newsworthiness. It is not there to provide publicity for one party as opposed to another party. It has to look at the newsworthiness of every single instance, and that should be planned properly in the daily morning news diaries, which take place, which can change throughout the day. That's very important. I did allude earlier to the important role that the Independent Electoral Commission is to play during elections, but the same principles should apply outside of that. And one should make sure that newsworthiness is the only parameter and of interest and newsworthiness to South Africans. That is very important. I agree with you that we should not only be looking at the salaries of the least or lesser senior employees in the organization. I think, to support your point, the important principles of any board is firstly to direct the affairs of the organization. That can never be taken away from the board. It delegates that authority to its chief executive officer and other senior officers of the board. The board's second responsibility is to provide proper financial oversight. And that means not only sitting passively, but making active decisions about the proper finances of the organization. The third issue that the board has to do is ensure the organization has adequate and the correct resources at each and every single level. In other words, the board's responsibility is to make sure that the money is spent in the right areas. And besides that, at the same time, the board has to ensure legal compliance and ethical integrity, which means making sure that one doesn't have irregular or unauthorized or wasteful or fruitless expenditure. That is the board's job, to make sure that its management does that correctly. Finally, then again, one must meet the appropriate interests of all the stakeholders. But the board has a very, very important role, not only to maintain and support management, but in managing all the resources responsibly. Mr. Pamba, I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Honorable Bambo. The Honorable Dr. Basso.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much, Mr. Green, for your intensive kind of presentation and the role you played to the SABC. And one can conclude that indeed you invested a lot to this organization for a long time, and there were fruits that were beared out of your investment. But what is not clear for me are the reasons for you to leave SABC after such a huge investment to this organization. Perhaps if you can expand on that, then again, all of a sudden now, you want to go back to SABC now as a board member. What are the reasons for you to want to go back? That's one question. The second one, and the last one. In terms of the state capital report findings about this entity called SABC, there is a glaring mismanagement of funds, as well as a lot of corrupt practices that are there in that report. Can you tell us as a committee, what kind of mechanism will be put in place to ensure that in future it doesn't occur in this organization under your watch? And secondly, what mechanism can be employed to ensure that you recover those monies that have been squandered by these scrupulous individuals within this institution? Those are the two questions. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That is a very insightful question. I think if one looks at my CV, I left the SABC after the 1994 election to pursue the first private license. By nature, I'm attracted to commercial media. I had a fantastic relationship with the entire advertising industry. I'm sorry that the late Dr. Ivy Matsepika Saburi cannot testify to that. She was my last chairperson at the board of the SABC. I left at the time, and if one looks at the shareholders that were in my consortium, I was approached initially by the National Sports Council under the guidance of the late Minister Steve Shweti, to put together a channel which could fight for sports rights. We were joined in that consortium by Worldwide African Investment Holdings, which at the time was led by Mr. Patuma and Schleko, who became a board member in our corporation. I was also joined on the board of our television bid by Mr. Dali Tambo, by Prime Media, and by Sasani Studios at that stage. We were also joined by Channel 4 in the UK, who regarded us as a consortium who would be competitive in South Africa. I also was very proud of the fact that two of the shareholders were Mwasa and Bamawu, the two SABC trade unions. The fact that they joined my consortium will testify to the fact as to the wonderful relationship that I had with both the broadcast trade unions while a senior executive of the SABC. So I left the SABC for no other reason but to take part in what was a democratization and privatization of a part of media in South Africa. We were unfortunately not successful in getting the license, but it's important to note that a year after we lost the license, I was approached by the winning consortium, ETV, to join them to assist in building their channel. So I think our relationships were completely intact. I was also appointed after he left the SABC by Mr. Zulaki Sisulu to act as an advisor to him in his nail business. Why I'd like to come back now is I retired 3 years ago. And as a retiree, I have time on my hands where I can devote the time that is necessary to give back to South Africa and to give back to the SABC. The SABC will always have a very big part of my heart. One underestimates how important the SABC is to every single South African, no matter who they are. And I would like to go back and contribute to them and to make them proud once again of our organization, the SABC. Your second question related to the state capture report. At the time, without mentioning specific instances, Chair, it was very heartbreaking to me that a lot of properties were being sold out of the SABC, which I personally had gone to extreme lengths to acquire for the SABC. I referred to the African Mirror range of programs. I referred to the entire archive of Jamie Ace, the wonderful South African filmmaker. We acquired those assets for the SABC at no cost. And to find out that they were subsequently being traded out of the SABC is a great travesty of justice for all South Africans. We have to prevent that from happening again. And I think to that extent, the board needs to establish the rules at once as to what remuneration can be paid to employees for disposing of assets. I don't believe any should be paid. The only commission payable to SABC employees should be on the basis of an arrangement where commission is paid on sales generated and revenue is generated for the SABC, not for selling assets of the SABC. Chair, finally, as you're aware, I am qualified in the MFMA, and as far as it relates to the PFMA, I have a great understanding of PFMA as well. I believe that the PFMA contains sufficient mechanisms in which to recover money and to recover funds which have been incorrectly acquired from organizations such as the SABC. I think it just requires the will of the board to make sure we pursue that recovery. I have no doubts, and I agree with you fully, Doctor, we have to pursue those people who've acquired assets from state corporations illegally with every means at our disposal. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Basop, but I saw Honorable Kolabanat. I'm not sure your follow-up is on this point or previously, but
Chair, please note me. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
no, I hear you now, but I have not seen your hand. Sorry, Honorable Majosi, you'd follow. You can just do that follow-up quickly.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Mr. Green, I find myself in the bizarre position of agreeing with every word that Honorable Pambo had to say. I actually worked for the SABC up until 2004 when the political pressures on editors, news persons, etc., they were literally told, you may not cover burning City Hall, you go and cover the politician cutting a ribbon. People were just flying out. They couldn't stand that kind of gerrymandering. And it seems to go through cycles. It recovers, newsrooms become credible again, and then it starts all over again. So I understand that issue. I was also the head of BAWAU in KZN and also managed SAFM. So I had also this bizarre relationship. So it's very interesting to me to speak with someone like yourself who has an encyclopedic knowledge of the inner workings of the SABC. People like you should not be allowed to retire, frankly. So what I did not hear from you was your response to the fact that, and because you've raised the issue of content over and over and over, this is absolutely the #1 priority. Your reaction to the fact that 800 million rand is sitting there unspent, it's for content. And it was never used. And that added to the loss of expertise, I think has been the major cause. It's 100% mismanagement from my perspective. I'd like your perspective, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gola-Barnard. I cannot reiterate more the fact that the board's responsibility is to make sure that the newsrooms do not go through that cycle. The professionalism, and unfortunately one looks at world media today and one finds a regretful approach in media that social media is tending to distort proper news processes of validation and right of reply. One can only hope that the board of the SABC continues to ensure that all balances the right of reply, the fact that news has to be validated and verified, and that it is in fact newsworthy to get that going. The fact that there's 800 million there unspent is not something which I have to be honest, I'm fully aware of at this stage, not being part of the inner workings. I think that is regrettable because 800 million rand spent on programming could generate a great deal of advertising revenue for the SABC and hopefully enough revenue to pay for more than 80% of that expenditure, because one can't expend all of that money just on popular programming. But I believe that the SABC should be aiming to look at increasing its revenue by easily 800 to 1.2 billion rand by putting on proper programming. That should be an absolute priority of the board. And it comes back to the point I made about managing resources responsibly and making sure that adequate resources are put into the correct place. Thank you for that follow-on question.
Thank you, Honorable Kolabanat. I now recognize the Honorable Machozi. Once again, apologies, I didn't see your hand, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Good afternoon. I'm sorry I didn't, I'm quite juggling between meetings right now.
That's Mr. Green.
Mr.
Quentin Green.
Quentin Green.
Oh, Quentin Green. Oh, thank you. And my question is, it's just one. In terms of your leadership skills, what kind of board do you think you would want to be part of? And what kind of expertise will you be bringing in the board? As much as you have heard my colleagues speaking of different challenges that they've experienced, and knowing that there's also the political side that maybe you'd also as a board maybe have challenges on, and what sort of a board do you think would work for the SABC, given your experience that you've also worked at the SABC, and then given the fact that you would want in the public, people should see an SABC that is productive, that is efficient, that works. What type of a board would that be that maybe if you are appointed, you would want to be part of? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Majosi. Ms. Majosi, I think what's important is that one wants a board of team players, but a board of multiple skills. One needs, obviously, at this stage, financial people. And I'm happy that with my financial background, and particularly with an understanding, a deep understanding of the inner workings of the finances of the SABC, that I could be a contributory, one of a couple of financial contributory players. But one needs lawyers, one needs authors, one needs artists, one needs a portfolio of board members that represent the full spectrum as far as possible of the entire South African society. The one criteria, and to me the most important criteria, is which board members should stand or fall, is by the fact that they should have the highest ethical values and integrity. It should not be compromised by any stakeholder in terms of who they have to report. That is of vital importance. They should not be cowed by politicians. They should not be cowed by sports leaders. They should not be cowed by business people. They should not be cowed by the employees of the organization. They should be strong enough to understand that the role which they have been appointed to do and to stand up to that. So we're looking fundamentally for people of integrity who can work together. And I don't believe that that's an impossible task to achieve. I believe that fundamentally as South Africans, we are those people. And I think this board that you're appointing as a committee today is a board that can restore the SABC to its rightful position in the South African society. Thank you, Ms. Majosi.
Thank you. Honorable Majosi, you are fine. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. No, I'm okay. I'm fine.
Thank you. We will now get back to you. I think most of the ground has been covered. We'll get back to you for the 3 minutes to speak to the subcommittee.
So, thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And I wish once again to thank you and the subcommittee for the opportunity I've had to present myself as a possible candidate to the SABC board. I think the committee has an extremely difficult job. I've looked at the other candidates, and the subcommittee is faced with a wonderful array of South Africans, a couple who are really known to me, and I'm sure that we would be able to work together. I would just like to advise the subcommittee that I want to give you my assurance that if you do nominate me for appointment to this board, that the SABC will have my absolute attention and full integrity related to all matters of the board. It is too important for us not to lose the SABC in the manner possibly contemplated by the Auditor General, is that there is uncertainty relating to the going concern of the SABC. We need to restore, as a matter of absolute priority, that going concern nature of the SABC. And we have to make sure that it becomes a favorite institution in the South African life of every single South Africa again. I would be honored to serve, and I would be delighted to serve the SABC. As I've said before, it will, in my whole life, remain part of my heart. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And And of course, let me on behalf of the members once again thank you for appearing before this subcommittee. And of course, the objectives I've raised earlier, I'm sure you'd agree, would have achieved them. We would have learned a lot from the experiences you've shared, as well as the questions from members. Surely you'd still reflect beyond this session. Let me just deal with the formalities as we close the session. One being that for queries that you may have post this interview, the administration would still be your contact point as they were preparing you for appearance in this interview. But from a point of the decision making that needs to be done at our level, you would not need to make contacts because you'd have just joined to be one of the followers of the committee program, because every meeting is transparent and decisions get to be made in the view of the public. So keep looking at how far we are getting as the committee. But as I said, for any other thing, then the administration, Mr. Dabeni, would be able to respond to such questions. Thank you once again, as we would release you from the platform and look at the other candidate that would need to come before the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the committee. Enjoy your day.
Sure, if it's me, Ms. Dabeni, can you hear?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. The next candidate is Mr. Mpotedu. He's on the platform already, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Tsedu. Can we hear?
Honorable Maneli, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, I can hear you. You do hear us. Let me take the opportunity to welcome you on behalf of the subcommittee. You are appearing before the subcommittee of the Committee on Communications and Digital Technologies in the National Assembly. In line with the rules, this committee has been put together to focus on a particular task. And our task this time is the appointment process for the SABC board, which means that we report back to the committee. So please feel welcomed to this subcommittee. In terms of its constitution, it's constituted by political parties in line with the electoral support of 2019. But it's got fair representation, so it's not just one party meeting. So as I do the introductions, you'd also agree that that's the case. May I also hasten to just outline how we are going to proceed with this conversation. So we take it really not as an interview in the strict sense, but really a conversation with members. So we'll do a 45 minutes interaction, which takes into account brief introduction of the members. We then come to you for 5 minutes for you to briefly introduce yourself, which will also take into account your experiences, your skills, and so on, and the reason to be considered for appointment in the SABC board. After that, 5 minutes, then the members would then come in to interact with you in terms of questions. We've allocated about 5 minutes per member for question and your responses. And I must hasten to say that because members do not ask questions only on the basis of the 5 minutes introduction, but go beyond that because they may have also looked at your CV in the detailed one. So the 45 minutes may be less or a little bit of a spillover as members will be asking for answers, and in some cases there'll be follow-up questions. That's why we take it as a conversation, because a member may want to just come back on an issue he would have raised. Once the members would have asked their questions from the side of the chairperson, I would not ask the question if the ground has been covered, unless a point needs to be lifted up just for the clarity of the subcommittee. Thereafter, we'll give you 3 minutes to address the committee for the last before you get off the platform and you get to the next candidate. So I hope that it clarifies how we are going to proceed going forward. I will quickly run through the members on the platform because we only have one member who will probably join later because of connectivity and other challenges in the province where she is, Honorable Mtemu. I will start with the Honorable Dr. Basop from the ANC. Honorable Dr. Basop from the ANC.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon to you, sir, as well. Thank you.
That's the
afternoon, sir.
The Honorable Molala. Honorable Molala.
Good afternoon,
That's the Honorable Mulala from the African National Congress, Honorable Manili. It's myself who's also the chair of the session from the NC. And as I said, Honorable Mtembu may join or may not, but we do have the numbers to proceed. So I've already welcomed you in that scope, in the capacity of being the chair. I will now recognize the member of the day just for the introduction, Honorable Kolabanak. I hope you are still connected.
I am. I'm waiting for the load shedding to start in a few minutes and I'll have to switch over, but hello and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kolabanak from the Democratic Alliance.
Afternoon, Honorable Kolabanak.
We do have the Honorable Pambo from the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF. Honorable Pambo.
Yeah, afternoon, Mr. Matata Zedi.
Afternoon, Honorable Pambo.
So we'll now look at Honorable Majosi from the Inkatha Freedom Party, IFP. Honorable Majosi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Tsedu.
Afternoon, Honorable Majosi.
So those are the members, as I said, looking at representation of parties proportional to size. That's a brief introduction. We'll now give you the 5 minutes to address the committee. Over to you, Mr. Tsedu.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to all the honorable members of the subcommittee, as they've just been introduced. I welcome the opportunity to appear before you for this conversation, as the Chairperson has indicated. My name is Mpho Tsedu, and I'm sure you have at least had the benefit of going through my curriculum vitae, and basically the reason why I am here, based on that CV, is because I am a qualified and ethical broadcaster with a track record of objectivity. I understand and have passion for public broadcasting. I've spent about almost 2 decades, 20 years around the SABC on both radio and television in various capacities. In as much as I have gone to acquire the educational qualifications that I have and where I am at the moment, I consider myself a child and a product of the SABC, having gone through the various tasks at that establishment. And I'm serving currently in other state-owned entities in capacities as, for instance, chairing a committee on HR and remuneration, also belonging to audit and risk committee. And I've gone to really amass enough knowledge and skills to serve at the level at which the SABC board is at. I want to contribute to address the legacy governance failures at the SABC. I want to be part of an SABC with modernized sales and operating models. I want to see an SABC that will develop and launch its own OTT platforms. An SABC that will seize opportunities that will be created by the recently, of course, adopted or passed master plan, the creative industries master plan, especially in that audio and visual element of the plan. Opportunities that will come out of course, the SABC bill. And I want to be part of a generation of leaders that will get the SABC to trade with compelling content and to implement sustainable revenue generating initiatives that speaks to the demands of the consumers or the viewers out there, and contemporary viewers, that is those who have needs and demands that are different from the past. I want to be part of an SABC that will attract audiences in all its platforms, a rejuvenated SABC that must be a point of reference for Africa and the world over. Because it worries me, for instance, that if you can take, for example, your SADC countries, their national broadcasters would rather loop Saudi Arabian channels, news channels, or American or Chinese channels instead of looping African or even South African content. And I want to be part of this SABC that would treat everybody and everybody equally, and treat each and every language equally as well. For me, the SABC is key. The SABC is key in economic development and, of course, nation building. It requires excellent minds that can help it to be a true 4IR digital broadcaster with an OTT presence like some of its competitors, honestly. And as envisaged in the NDP, that you will, data would have to be made available and accessible. The spectrum has been sold. It creates an opportunity for SABC to partner with your mobile operators or other OTTs in ensuring that it becomes a not that old SABC, but an SABC of today and tomorrow. So, for instance, already you have Google has already launched its cable, the submarine cable that came from Europe in Cape Town here, which means 5G opportunities are going to be greater for South Africans. And therefore, this is where the SABC must also play a part. And this is the type of SABC that I would personally want to ensure that I am part of in terms of the board to guide and provide leadership for the management so that they can be relevant and remain relevant in this era. Chair, I think let me stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Tsedu. Like I said, we'll now get to members who would want to engage. I do see on the platform there that Honorable Machuzi indicates that in a few minutes she may experience problems. I'm not sure if she wanted to speak, but I want to identify members who would want to engage. The Honorable Dr. Bassob, Honorable Kolabanat, I have noted your hands, but as I said, I just wanted to check if Honorable Machozi would have wanted to speak before what she has posted there. Honorable Machozi?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chairperson.
Yes, I wanted to check if you wanted to speak.
Yes,
before.
yes, I want to speak, Chair. That's why I say
Okay, I've
yes,
noted
Chair.
you. Noted by
Okay,
Honorable Bassob, Honorable. Is that Honorable Pambo?
Yes, my apologies, Chair. I'm also going to struggle a bit with the network. So I wanted to make my input straight after Ms. Machozi, if the committee is allowing, but it will take me a good 7 minutes just to shift. But if that is not permissible, I will then, in your indulgence, wait for the other hands. But I would really appreciate to just quickly come in after her before we are messed up with this load shedding. Thanks.
No, we'll assess the situation, but the intention is to get everyone to participate as I'm trying to do now. And I'm sure honorable members will be amenable to that. The Honorable Machozi, if you can come in.
Oh, thank you very much, Chairperson. Mine would be on, as much as you have spoken a lot about the experiences that you have and what the SABC could benefit on. What I would want to know is that with the challenges that the SABC is currently having of addressing the strategy that they'd adopted, and also with the bailout that they had received and the conditions that they had received the bailout on. One of them would be reducing the salary bill and making sure that they can sustain themselves without further bailouts. What would your take be on that? And combining that with the leadership skills that you would be bringing, your expertise that you would be bringing in the SABC board, if appointed, what kind of board you would want to serve in, what type of leadership skills you will be bringing in, and also the fact that what board would be an efficient and productive board that will work for the SABC and for South Africans as a whole. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tsedu. The approach we're taking is an interactive one, so I would have less interruptions between you and the member, like as we go forward also. I forgot to just indicate that so that it's really interactive, so you can proceed.
Okay, thanks very much, Chairperson. And thanks for the question, Honorable Machozi. The turnaround strategy as it had been adopted, I'm not so sure how much of the I don't know if they are called cardinal pillars here, but points that they wanted it to achieve. I don't know how much and how far they've gone.
From DG downwards, because if you leave gaps, and then you will always chase issues of accountability from behind, because it's a structure that has too many gaps, and therefore accounting gaps occur frequently and willy-nilly. So we started focusing on this. And number one, in terms of filling up the post, was the post of the Director General, which has now been filled with effect from January this year. And then there were 4 DDG posts that were vacant. 1 DDG corporate services is now filled. DDG chief financial officer is now filled. DDG regulation, enforcement and compliance is now filled. DDG water and sanitation now filled. These are all the vacancies that we found vacant in the department with only acting people, but they are now fixed and filled. There are 7 posts, so all 7 posts now of DDGs are filled, bar 1, where that is the Chief Director Infrastructure. No, the DDG Infrastructure, whose case is dragging on and on and on. We've tried everything that we can to ensure that it doesn't drag further, but there are just legal and technical matters that we couldn't cut off. And therefore, we are merely complying with those, but the case itself, 99% of it has been dealt with procedurally and so on. We just have to wait for the completion thereof. But that's the only post that we have, which is vacant, where there's an acting DDG. And then as far as chief directors are concerned, 8 posts that were vacant at the time we came have now been filled. 10 director posts that were vacant have now been filled. Other than that, 3 vacant posts that have been left by senior managers who were promoted to higher positions are now in the process of being filled. Now, 1 chief director post that was vacated by CFO will be filled as from the 1st of October, this is next month. And 1 vacant director post on forensic investigation and quality assurance is also in the process of being filled. And 1 vacant director post vacated by the current Western Cape provincial representative of or leader there of our office is also in the process of being filled. Now, we have also approved an organogram that we found there, which was a concern to many components in the department. We've had to sit with labor, sit with everybody to make sure that the structure is in accordance with a repositioning that we, as dictated to by the strategic planning. But, and therefore it is now aligned to MTEF, and we are more emphatic on technical positioning of the department as opposed to just filling it with human beings. This is a shift that we're making. Now, this is the first part of strengthening, but we are aware that merely filling posts doesn't automatically result into a strong department. You need to go into the systems of the department, all of them, from procurement. I'm not suggesting that ministry wants to procure, but I'm talking about systems. We realize that the resulting recurring improper accounting issues in the department flow from weaknesses of the system that we found there. And we have emphasized to the DG that he needed and he still needs to pay a lot of attention to our systems, from procurement to human resource, and dealing with internal matters, including construction and all of that. Some of these matters we're dealing with Treasury, because it is clear to us that in procurement, for instance, procuring things like papers and pens is not the same as procuring for a 24 billion project. These are vast different, and we have raised the matter, and the cabinet is dealing with this matter so that there is a way to fast track delivery of projects that we so require in the department, rather than relying on these delays that we are experiencing in terms of procurement for projects in the department, delivery projects. So what then are we doing? Of course, we're saying as of March 2021, in the annual report that was delivered to SCOPA, there was unauthorized expenditure of 641 million. This is March last year. And there was irregular expenditure of 18 billion from both accounts, the main account and the trading account, 10 and 8 respectively, billion rand. And then fruitless and wasteful expenditure amounted to 287 million. Main account 64, and the trading account 223 million. Obviously, these are huge expenditure. These are huge sums of money to go under the title of unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, wasteful, and it's very ugly. So this improper expenditure has been incurred over a number of years. That is before we arrived on the 5th of August last year. Now, but then they accumulated and they were reported to SCOPA in March, 31 March 2021. Since we arrived then, various interventions have been activated to bring this to an end. We're using condonations where appropriate, exit strategy where feasible, and cancellations of some of these contracts where feasible. And these measures are yielding some positive results, and we're wanting to see decline on all these kind of improper expenditures, and we are serious about it. Now, as of March this year, 2022-2023, the balances are as follows. We're still at 641 in terms of unauthorized expenditure. Combined, CFO will deal with more detail to bring this to light. And irregular, we're at 16.5, and these still combined, both accounts. And then wasteful, fruitless and wasteful at 2 to 3. These issues, we realize they are not an overnight matter to deal with them, because the recurrence has been taking place over a number of years without drastic steps being taken to bring an end to this kind of reporting to Parliament, with this kind of a report being just part of our culture. We don't want this. So, but we're saying that we're making efforts to eliminate this. Now, a summary, the next issue, which is the third one at high level, are issues that are that are under investigation, either by internal audit or by special investigations unit or South African Police Services. Now, I'm reporting on this as the third aspect at a high level that we will be reporting on in detail, but taking it because it is important, just as I've done in terms of recurring improper expenditures in the department. Now, number one, I want to indicate that during the time of one of my predecessors, Minister Mlewa, the late, of course, there were a number of cases that were registered at that time. This was 2009 up to 2014. There were 28 cases that were registered for investigation. 27 were financial, and the number of cases that were pending at that time was 1. And then the director, the person who was leading the department at an executive level was an acting director general called Balza. Now, from 2014 to 2018, Balza was still acting. And this is one of the things that we should all appreciate, that we're in the era of allowing acting people for a long time, unreasonably long, for some reason or the other, that is beyond our understanding. But of course, in 2014, a DDG in the form of Mr. Drix was appointed. But during that period, 2014 and 2018, 72 cases were registered for investigation. Of course, 64 were finalized out of 72, just like out of 28, 27 were finalized during Mlewa's time, with 1 that was pending. And now, and in up to 2018, 8 outstanding. Well, another DG did take over, and another acting DG. So during that period, 14 to 18, yes.
Yeah, we don't normally
okay.
do this, but we profusely apologize. Some of the issues that you are highlighting probably will come up as
okay.
we act. Yes, so I would like you to wrap up.
Sum up.
Yes.
Okay. I will do that.
Apologies.
No, I understand.
Right.
It's just that accounting is accounting. You want to be fully heard, but
Yes.
I appreciate. The last matter on the high level summary is water resource management, which is part of our delivery. But just to say that we've shifted our attention, not without focus, from water resource management to water services management, that is delivery to the people on the ground. There are various, quite a number of key schemes per province. Each province will identify the key scheme that we are collaborating on with districts and so on, but others, they are dealing with them alone. I don't have all the time to highlight all of them, but just to say that when we are making a number of interventions via Section 63, via promotion of cooperation between us and municipalities, via promoting partnership, whether it is PPP or the new one that we have established or developed with DPSA via an office called the Water Partnership Office, and then via reconfiguring water ports. Now, we're not going to, we want to stop here and then allow the department to come with all the details. Thank you very much for enabling us to highlight those key points in this meeting. Thank you very much. Mwache will lead the presentation. Through you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob Matsingwane, for what was supposed to be a brief introduction, but that indicates the extent and the magnitude of the challenges confronting the department, we understand, Bob Matsuman. I'm not too sure if I had the chair correctly. Seeing that the meeting today is a hearing and we've received the report, but an opportunity to interact and extensively interact with the report. Under normal circumstances, we'd hand over to our honorable member to lead the charge in terms of the hearing, and then the department will have an opportunity to interact with us as and when questions are asked. They will extensively elaborate on what is contained in the presentation. If the department don't mind to straightly give Honorable Liz an opportunity to lead the investigation, the hearing. Honorable Liz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Minister, Matlingwan, for the report as it turns out. The number of highly paid senior people in big positions is obviously important, but it begs the question what money is left after paying salaries for the real provision which you closed off with, is the provision of services. So we hope that balance is there. But today we're looking at the financial or the annual report for the 2021 year. And some of the issues, Minister, you've touched on, but there are so many issues. Mr. Chairman, I in the short time that we have, we're not going to be able to touch on everything that is possible. This department is in a bad way and has been in a bad way, and the Minister is taking action to fix it, and we thank him for that. But it remains, as he says, work in progress. So let me start where the Minister did touch on, but the issues that we as a standing committee on public accounts focus on is historical, and it generally is financial, although of course finances are impacted by other service issues. So, but let me start with the fruitless and wasteful expenditure. There's been, over that particular year, during that particular year, there was a massive increase in this expenditure. Largely, it's not. So it went from 65 million to 223 million, a figure which the Minister has mentioned, and apparently has, when we get to the year that's just finished in March 22 or April, we'll have the same figure, 223. But the biggest increase there of 158 million is broken down in the annual report without any detail. So the question I would like to start off with is, there's an item here on page 436 of the annual report. There's 51, let me start at the top. The 78.9 million rand losses incurred relating to external projects. What were those external projects? And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to do it on a hearing basis, which is what we are in today. So if I may ask the question, get a response to my question without too much of additional justifications, and we'll move on to the next question, if that's in order. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no, that's in order, Honorable Liz. So to the department, as and when the question is posed, you don't need to wait for us to give you a go-ahead to respond to the question. Honorable Liz will indicate as when he needs responses, and then you'll come in as such. You don't have to wait for us to grant you permission to respond. Over to you, DG or Minister.
Thank you very much,
Yes.
Chairperson. It's Franz Moatsi, as indicated by the Minister. In response to the question by Honorable Liz, the external project relates to projects that are implemented by the department's construction unit for entities such as the municipalities, where we have incurred those losses. And as indicated by Honorable Liz, I will stop there so that I do not talk beyond the question. So the external projects are projects implemented by our construction units for municipalities and other infrastructure-related projects within the RBIC, which is the Regional Bulk Infrastructure Grant, and Water Services Infrastructure Grant. Thank you, Chair.
And thanks. Which specific projects incurred these losses?
Okay, thanks, Chairperson. It's various projects in our 9 provinces. Those include, amongst others, the projects that construction has been implemented. For example, in Limpopo, we had the Guyana project where the construction unit has been involved. We also have other projects that they've been implementing for COVID-19 across a number of provinces. We also had bucket eradication projects that construction unit has been implementing, Chairperson.
Okay, that's quite general. So you don't have a list of those projects in front of you, I assume, otherwise you would give them to us. But then let's just look at the Guyana one. That one's been around for a while. What was the reason for the loss, and how much was the loss on that one? In terms of the 78.9 million that's reported for this year, how much of that was from that project?
Chairperson, I will have to quickly draw, as indicated, the preparation was different from the department. I will be able to draw that information. I'm not sure if I'm allowed that we pause on that I'm able to draw that information for the committee. So if I'm allowed, if we can pass through that, then I'll be able to pull the specific report that speaks to those figures with your permission, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy with that. But if we could also then, before I spend time asking similar questions about, there are 2 other issues of wasteful expenditure for that year. There's abnormal costs incurred relating to internal projects of 51.76, 51.8 million, and interest expenditure of 25.1. Can we just look at the details there while we carry on?
Yeah, we will do so, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DG. Okay, so let's then move on to irregular expenditure, and I hope we don't bump into the same kind of problems here. The Minister, you talked about condonation, but it doesn't seem to have happened. And indeed, what you're saying is even in the next financial year, the figure hasn't got. Why is there a problem with getting these condemnations done? We're talking irregular expenditure now, not wasteful.
The reasons, Chairperson, for a lack of condonation in the financial year under review is due to the fact that investigations were still ongoing, and also some of the disciplinary proceedings that are required by the National Treasury as we request approval for condonation. So in that particular year, it then indicates that we were not done with the the consequence management in particular. Some of the investigations were concluded. However, the disciplinary proceedings were pending at that period.
So, okay, it seems to be taking an awful long time, because am I correct, Minister, that you said in the year that's just finished, the following year to the one we're looking at, the problem of condemnations has remained and hasn't yet been resolved. So we're talking about now 2 years of these issues, and I know you've reported what you're doing to try and improve that, but it's just seems to go on and on and on. Am I right? Or are there condemnations that have been dealt with and investigations, that have been completed and disciplinary processes? You reported that there were a number of disciplinary action that had been dealt with. Are those involved in the condemnation process?
Well, just to explain there, we have agreed on condonation as a mechanism to resolve some of the outstanding matters. But there's a qualification, as I said, we said condonation where desirable or feasible. Now, that is subject, in other words, to Treasury approvals, processes approved by DG and cross-checked. And so these are things that that are ongoing in the department, and it may then occur that while the instrument is there, it hasn't found specific application to the cases at hand, as CFO is explaining that. It means it coincides with matters that have not been finalized either via Treasury or even internal. Thank you.
Okay, so there haven't been the investigations that have been or the disciplinary cases that have been finalized are not linked to irregular expenditure, is what I'm hearing you saying. And also irregular expenditure, the other alternative, of course, is to recover the funds from the guilty party, which seems unlikely, but is that part of what the process is heading towards? Because in the end of the day, it's either that or condemnation. There's no, I'm not aware of any other way of dealing with irregular expenditure.
Yes, of course, as we say, this is a very frustrating moment for us, where we have to explain one and the same thing, not because members of the portfolio committee, it's not their fault to ask questions or inquiries, but frustrating on our side that we find ourselves having to repeat ourselves because things take a long time. I mean, this disciplinary case, for instance, of the DDG in infrastructure, I think it is in the 4th year, but without finishing. Now, in the meantime, there are other things that are coming in, even new cases that relate to the very same disciplinary cases. So it is true that some of these investigations take very long. And when you finalize one aspect of it, another aspect crops up or can't be finished at that very time. So they are tracking, yes, they are quite long, but we're hoping that we'll get over them at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. So,
Chairperson, can I add? It's Sean Phillips here, the DG. In answer to your specific question, there are some matters for which we have received condemnations from National Treasury over the last 6 months to a year. So some of the matters have reached finalization, but some are still pending.
Thank you, Sean. Okay, so of the irregular expenditure for the year under review, it's 179.9 million. 162 million in the notes on page 434 involve contracts varied by more than 20% without National Treasury pre-approval. So the disciplinary steps in your annual report is investigation to be conducted. So this report was probably produced in about July last year, August last year. So a year later, of that 162 million, what Sean is saying is, the DG is saying is that some of it has been finalized, but how much is still has been dealt with?
Frans?
Thank you, DG. Chairperson, a total amount of 1.4 billion has been condoned. That relates to a cleaning services contract for the amount is 53 million. And we also had a call center service contract, which is the amount is 230 million. And for security services is 967 million. And we also had EOH for the IT services to the department, 236 million. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So those are all condonations which have taken place. Just for information purposes, I've been asked to focus on the water trading unit. So the figures I'm speaking about are just those, but of course there are the other figures that the minister also included earlier. So thank you for that. The question about the on page 365 of the annual report, is the question of the material irregularity, item 42, and I think it, as far as I can make out, it relates to a project of increasing the capacity of the Hazelmere Dam in KwaZulu-Natal, which has been ongoing since 2015, and there were costs involved for re-establishment of sites and so on. And of course, the dam, that project apparently, some 6 years later, still hasn't been completed. So who are the companies who are involved in this loss of 28.8 million that was incurred here?
Thank you, Chairperson. The companies that are involved on the project, we have Group 5 as well as Ingerop, the consulting engineers.
Am I correct in saying the project is not yet complete? And if so, what likely additional losses are there going to be?
Chairperson, can I request our DDG for Infrastructure, Leonardo Manos, to come in on this question? He's managing this project now. It is still incomplete, but we've taken measures over the last months to accelerate it. And Leonardo, if you can briefly summarize the current situation and the plans going forward.
Thank you. I'm entirely happy for whoever got the information to answer, so please don't feel constrained at all.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Just to say that the project was stuck at 96% kind of completion, which means that the last 4% was just to finalize the anchoring on and the stabilization of the additional structure that was added on to actually raise the wall. That anchoring is currently underway, and of the additional, or rather the remaining work, the remaining 4% work, we're currently at 60% completion of that work, which means that the work is progressing, and we are anticipating the completion to happen in February 2023. Thank you very much.
And the additional costs, or that beyond the original budgeted costs, we've got losses of 28.8 million so reported in the 2021 year. What additional costs are involved?
The additional cost in terms of claims that is still outstanding is still being determined by the adjudicator at this point in time, because we are in that process. So I don't have a definite figure at this point in time, unfortunately. Apologies for that.
What are the claims? What do the claims amount to? Let's assume that they may all be granted, or do you have that figure?
That figure has come down after some negotiation, but unfortunately it has not been completed as yet, but it's still at 46 million.
Thank you. So this, the floods earlier this year put that dam in danger. Am I correct? You had to open the gates, floodgates or sluice gates or whatever they're called, to try and safeguard the work which wasn't completed. Is that correct? So we didn't get the benefit of the increased capacity.
As the dam before the floods, we already had benefit of additional capacity because of the fact that the previous full supply level, which was 100%, was lifted. However, you are correct to say that we didn't get the full benefit though, in terms of the retention of the volume of water that could have been retained. So yes, we did some pre-releases, but that was not adequate. So the dam did eventually spoil during the flood period, and the piano key weir that was added onto the original structure performed as per the design, and there was no, and after some inspection that was done by the approved professional person, which is the civil engineer responsible for the structure during construction, gave a certificate to say that the dam was remained structurally intact and that there was no blemish to the integrity of the structure during the flood. So that is the report that we can give at this point in time.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the losses already incurred and possible future losses, which sound like they could be even higher than the losses already incurred, why has the SIU not been involved in a proper investigation as to who was responsible there, and even if they haven't, who are the officials and have they been disciplined for these losses?
Perhaps, Leonardo, if you can just talk about the nature of the losses and the causes of the losses, and then we can get into the corrective actions.
The nature of the losses would be in terms of the delay that was attained through the fact that there was a change of design during the construction. So when it was actually detected only. So just to give a very brief overview of it, was that the original design included a specific anchoring mechanism, which was typically or technically termed as the load cells. But then the specification received actually had some, or the specification according to which the allocation of the contract was done, had a different design which didn't include the original design specification, and that caused a dispute in between that led to a significant delay on the construction of this project. So that is just a high level overview in terms of why there were delays and that what actually led to then the financial losses in terms of delays.
Thank you. That's very informative. Yeah, Sean, DG, you want to add?
So from my understanding, Frans, would you like to come in? From what Leonardo has said, has it been necessary to take any disciplinary action, or Leonardo, what action have we taken to, is the fact that there was a change due to unforeseen circumstances, or have we warned officials that they need to take more care in future? Perhaps you can elaborate on that between you and Frans.
Okay, the brief that I can give was that the knowledge that I have that there was an investigation done by professionals appointed by our internal audit, and there were certain recommendations made in that regard, but that was received recently. And the decision is at this point in time to be made in terms of those that need to be disciplined. Unfortunately, and it's also true that this dates back, the adjudication dates back to 2014, which is quite long ago, and some of the officials are not part of the department no more. But I think that the CFO can perhaps add to that.
CFO, can you add, or Michael, if you're in the meeting, can you also give us an update on the results of the internal audit investigation?
Yes, thank you, DG. That's correct that the investigation has been concluded. It was received, provided to the DG, and we have then submitted that to the Labor Relations Office to begin with the process of instituting those recommendations for action that had to be taken against the officials who were mentioned in the report to have contributed to the delays on non-decision making on the projects that led to those costs. There's also a process of finalizing the quantum of some of these losses that would have incurred on the project.
Thank you. Yeah. So as I understand it, then there are recommendations. Can you please tell us what the recommendations are, and who are the officials involved, and reassure this committee that even if those officials have left the employ of the department, they will be followed up wherever they currently find themselves.
Chairperson, I can't recall the details of the internal audit report because we get quite a few, but the way that it works is that when there's an internal audit report like this, and it indicates that disciplinary action should be taken against people, it was then referred to Labour Relations, and they have to start a disciplinary process. But Chairperson, as you're aware, a disciplinary process must take its course. That doesn't mean that people are guilty. It means that there must be a disciplinary case that defend themselves. But what I can say is that where officials in the department have been found to be negligent, and internal audit has said that disciplinary action should be taken against them, we will pursue those disciplinary cases fairly but fully to their conclusion, and action will be taken. I think in this case, from what Leonardo has said, it wasn't a case of money being stolen, any criminal action. So if the officials who were negligent have since left the department, if they had been involved in corruption or stealing money, then we would definitely pursue them and pursue criminal action against them. But if they were negligent in their duties, and we would then, in the normal course of things, if they were still in the department, pursue disciplinary action against them, such as warnings or even dismissal on the grounds of gross negligence. Then if they've left the department, then it's not possible to take further action if it's a matter of negligence or not doing their jobs properly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I will need some guidance, I think, on this matter to some extent, because in the past we've we've had similar kind of discussions about people's names, and we've insisted as a committee and as Parliament on being supplied with the full report, including the names unredacted, despite the fact that the disciplinary action may still be in progress. And so I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that the full report unredacted be provided to us within the next 7 days. But I leave that to you. Just in terms of those employees who may have left and therefore fall outside of the ambit of the internal disciplinary action and perhaps can't be charged criminally, surely you can follow them up with a civil action to recover whatever you can from them.
I agree, Chairperson. We could do that if they had stolen money or if they'd been corrupt. We could do that to recover. But if they'd been pursuing their duties and they'd made an error in the course of pursuing their duties, it might be difficult to make a case that you can claim all those losses because they made an error while genuinely trying to carry out their duties.
All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, as I said at the beginning, there is so much here. I mean, there's just pages and pages. So I'm sorry if I'm sort of homing in on a few, but I think what I've tried to do is to home in on illustrative examples. But there's probably a great deal more that other members might be coming into. The question of the additional interest, now I just need help on this one because it's in terms of the SIU investigation. If you look at, you might not have it, but it relates to, I think, to the Vuwani pipeline investigation of the SIU. There was a disciplinary referral which the department lost in inverted commas, and then accordingly in 2018 the department had filed a review application with the Labour Court. So it's now 2022. What is the status of that particular case?
Intabi Singh or Conrad or Darrell, are you able to respond on this matter?
Good morning, Chairperson and members. In terms of the review that we have submitted to the court, the review is still pending. The difficulty that the court has had in the past a few weeks and few months was the inability to serve the notice to the official that is implicated. They have sent their sheriff to the address that they have in their position, but unfortunately they could not find her in that address. So they were looking for the new address in terms of serving the sheriff notice to her. It's actually the official that we have indicated that is on suspension, the DDG infrastructure. Thank you, Chair.
Sure. So that's quite disturbing because am I right that this was a review application in 2018, 4 years ago, and the person is known, Miss Mate, I assume is the person. She's on suspension, presumably getting paid every month, but in 4 years, the sheriff hasn't been able to find her, and she's being paid, I assume, full pay by the taxpayer all this time. Am I getting it right?
Yes, Chairperson, but it's not as though the department has not been doing anything during this time. There has been disciplinary action against her. The disciplinary processes are almost complete. The presiding officer has made findings on all the charges against her, and it's now at the final stage, which should be completed in the next few weeks of the matter of hearing the two different sides on what the sanction should be based on the findings.
Okay, I'm really now a little bit confused. Sorry. Forgive me. I'm not directly involved and knowledgeable as you are. So the SIU reported to us on Proclamation 54, R54, that the disciplinary hearing was finalized and Ms. Mate was found not guilty, and the DWS then filed a review application at the Labour Court. So what disciplinary, are we talking about two different cases perhaps? Can you clarify that?
Ntabiseng, or Darrell or Conrad, can you explain, please?
Yes, Chairperson. I think there are two different issues here that has been raised by the DG. The review that we are talking about, that we have filed at the court, is relating to the first charges that Ms. Mate was charged on. There were 4 charges that he was charged on, which Vuani was one of them, for appointing the ASCAL, and then the second charge was on Hudetro and the Giani, and as well as Black Dot. That is the separate charges on the current cases that is currently ongoing. And these 4 charges, that's where she was found not guilty, and the department filed the review on this particular matter. And on the issue of not finding her, when she changed the address, if she has changed the address, she has not informed the department in terms of the changing of the address. What we have done as a department, we have liaised with her representative in terms of him providing us with the address so that the papers can be served on her. Unfortunately, he is not willing to assist us in terms of providing with the new address. Thank you, Chair.
Chairperson, if I can just add, so while she was found not guilty on those charges and the review application process, she was also charged for other matters, also related to issues being investigated by the SIU, and that's the process that I'm talking about, which is nearing completion.
Thank you for the clarity, DG, but it does kind of raise more questions. So if that disciplinary process that you I now understand has coming to a conclusion, was this done in absentia, or was Ms. Mate present during this disciplinary process?
She was present.
So if she was present, how is it possible that we don't know where to serve a notice? Why didn't we phone the sheriff and say, she is here in the offices, serve it here? Or why didn't we just stop her salary until we get a new address and say, we can't pay your salary, we don't know where you live? I'm astounded. And what is her monthly salary amount? How much is she paid every month?
She's paid the standard salary of a DDG.
Which is what?
Which is publicly available on the DPSA website. They change annually every time that there's salary increases. I don't know offhand the exact amount per annum at the moment, but it's publicly available information. Ntabiseng, would you like to answer as to the follow-up question from the chair about perhaps if you can also clarify who is responsible for managing the sheriff and getting the sheriff to serve to serve matters and try and clarify the chairperson's additional question. And Tabiseng?
In terms of the salary, she is earning between 1.5 and 1.7, which is the annual salary for the DDG. In terms of the responsible of managing the sheriff is the state attorney. Thanks, Chair.
Sorry,
Chairperson. Okay. No, sorry, carry on, Chairperson.
Okay, so sorry, DG, I've just flummoxed because if this was my company, and I've run fairly big companies, I would be shouting and the odds on paying someone. Let's assume the lower range of 1.5 million rand a year, probably since 2018 or thereabouts, and not making sure that the summons is served and action proceeds. I'm sorry, I don't know that there's a question in what I'm saying. It just seems to have been rather poorly handled.
I think, Chairperson, I think it should also be seen in the context that we do also have this other major disciplinary case against her with very substantial charges, which is nearing completion. So it should be seen in that context as well. It's not as though nothing is happening while she's earning a salary and suspended. There is a full disciplinary case with very serious charges, which is nearing completion. I would agree in the private sector you might stop the salary, but government is more regulated in more detail. We have to manage labor relations issues very carefully, and we have to follow the agreements that are in place. We haven't wanted to do anything to jeopardize the successful conclusion of the disciplinary case that we engaged in. While one might think that you might want to stop this salary until the person is found by the sheriff, taking such an action might result in counteraction, which might have jeopardized the process that we were in. So we have to be very careful to follow the rules and regulations governing labor relations and the agreements and follow the processes so that we can achieve a successful outcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, DG. Yeah, I understand that, and but I'm sure there are ways of doing things. I mean, someone like that can't simply disappear. Get a private investigator, do something. But anyway, I understand the set of charges which are currently coming to a conclusion. What do they involve? Is there any opportunity in this to recover some of this very high salary which has been paid to her?
They involve financial misconduct, Chairperson, and yes, we will be looking at that following the completion of the process and the announcement of the sanction. And I believe that the SIU are also looking into that.
Thank you very much. So hopefully your personnel department will ensure that the pension fund doesn't pay out the money if indeed the final determination is dismissal until the recoveries are done. But that's hopefully under control. Right, the question of the Mhlatuze board, or let me just find it on my page here. I don't think you'll have this. This is a document drawn up by a parliamentary researcher. The board members of Mhlatuze Water, a criminal case of contravention was opened against board members of Mhlatuza Water. Who are those board members? What are their names? This is in terms of proclamation R35, again, an SIU thing. The case number, if you want it, is CAS 22703 of 2010.
Intabiseng, are you able to respond on that one? Intabiseng?
Yes, Chairperson. I'm trying to look at the list, but
let that process continue in the background, because and when you're ready, just say something or interrupt me. I really, please don't stand on ceremony with me. There were 3 implicated employees of the Water Board who resigned prior to the completion of the investigation. And so this goes back to the kind of questions we were putting in terms of Ms. Mate. So they've resigned. Do you know what subsequent action has been taken against them in terms of some kind of criminal action or resignation? Because a criminal case apparently was opened there as well. That's a separate case. It's case 16411/2010. If there's been some progress. So perhaps that needs a little bit of backroom, DG, before an answer can be given. Okay, so on page 112 of the SIU presentation to the committee, so I don't know whether you guys have got it. Have I got the page number right? Anyway, it revolves around the Amatola water tank issue, and the malfeasance that took place there, in terms of the provision of these water tanks. It was, so it's the it's R23 of 2020 is the case number or SIU number, referral number. So their investigations found that there were 2 officials who failed to disclose their interest during the procurement. In other words, and there was an intern who was a director of a company as a service provider that the company also appointed to supply and deliver the so-called rainwater harvesting tanks. The intern is a sister of a buyer at the Amatola Water Board. So the question is, what action has been taken against them?
Chairperson, with regard to this investigation of Amatola, the investigation are still ongoing. However, there has been civil litigations that has been referred by SIU. There are 5 of them and 18 criminal referrals and the 2 disciplinary, as you have indicated, Honorable. So this case is still ongoing. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so it goes back to 2020. We're now in 2022. What is the reason for the delays? When did the SIU? Are you saying the SIU is still investigating, or you guys? Because from what I can see in the SIU report, they've actually got some findings for you to act on. So yeah, 17 service providers. It's all here in the SIU report, but I'm not sure when you got that. So perhaps it's not been a delay on your side. Is that right?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the water board, the disciplinary processes are handled by the water board, not by the department. And indeed, the cases, the investigation was done by SIU, and they've made those referrals. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so when do we envisage these things being wound up then? And you know, yeah, justice delayed and all that stuff. These things just seem to go on, and I understand, DG, there are Stalingrad tactics that are adopted by some people, and the law requires certain things to be done. But sure, when you've got so many issues in your department and its entities, I do sympathize in a way, but when we need to have kind of target dates on these things. I mean, this one is now 4 years. Can we get any indication of what you wrapped up? Sorry, carry on.
In terms of the, oh, sorry, DG. Oh.
Go ahead. I'll come in after you.
All right. Okay. In terms of the disciplinary that was taking place on the officials themselves, they were dismissed. One official was a buyer in supply chain management. That official has been dismissed. Thank you, Chair.
Well, there you go. I mean, I'm sorry for the official involved, but there are consequences for one's action, and I'm glad that we're able to tell South Africans that someone has been dismissed for doing the wrong thing, and that they haven't been transferred to another position in the same place or in another department, which I hope they haven't. Sorry, you were going to say?
No, Chair, I was saying the second one because it was an intern. His internship was not renewed, so he is no longer in the entity. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so these water tanks, I think, were part of the whole COVID expenditure in 2020. But the department, and this is not just Amatola now, purchased, if I remember correctly, something like 17,000 of these tanks and dumped them all over the country. Does the department have any idea whether those tanks were ever properly used and where they actually are right now? Can you tell us that you know where all these water tanks are, or should that be classified as wasteful expenditure?
Leonardo, are you in a position to answer that one?
DJ will be able to answer partially, is to say that it was certainly utilized during the COVID period in terms of getting people water, especially in the time when there was no, when it was hot lockdown and people had to wash hands. So implementing agent, which was Rand Water, ensured that there was a tank bring to those tanks. So definitely there was value that was obtained out of it. In terms of the current status of these tanks, there was a transfer process in terms of making this assets of the various municipalities where it was also then staged. But I think that if there's needs for more information than that, then we need to just attain it from our implementing agent in that regard. Thank you.
Thanks. If there could be a report, please, Mr. Chairman, on the status of those tanks. Where are they now? Have they been handed over? Because, yeah, my experience of water service providers, such as, if that's the right term, such as the Utugela District Municipality in KZN, they're a disaster, complete disaster. And the tanks probably are not fulfilling a useful purpose. So if we could get a report on that, please.
Chairperson, can I just make another comment about the general progress with regard to disciplinary action and investigations and the SIU investigations? The first point is that we are working in close collaboration with the SIU We are having regular meetings with them. We are giving them all the assistance that we can immediately on request for any assistance. And also we are monitoring the progress with all the financial misconduct disciplinary cases, many of which arise from the SIU investigations. I'm getting regular reports from our Labour Relations section and reviewing progress on all of the cases, and we are actively trying to drive them through to completion and make sure that the processes are moved with as much alacrity as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, as the proof is in the eating of the pudding or something to that effect. So we look forward to seeing the results of the increased action. Have we got any information yet about my earlier questions that we were going to do some background research on whilst we were talking?
Toko and Eustacia, do you have an answer on the question of the Umhlatusi board members? Can you come in if you do, please? Toko, can you come in, please? Or
Good morning,
Eustacia?
DG, we're looking for the answers. We will get back to you ASAP.
Okay, no
for the
problem.
names.
Thank you. I'm not sure about the who should handle the following question, but Minister, I understand from the information I've been given that you had requested a full report from the Disciplinary Advisory Committee that I think has since been disbanded. Has such a report been produced? And if so, can we have a copy of it?
Perhaps, Minister, with your permission, if I could come in on that one. Chairperson, the Minister was only given a verbal briefing when he took over from the Disciplinary Advisory Committee. I have repeatedly asked the former chairperson of that Disciplinary Advisory Committee for the report, but I have not received it, including I've written a letter to her asking her for the report. We're not sure whether there is a report or not. It was reported in the Daily Maverick that there was a written report, but I'm not sure. And despite repeated requests on my behalf, I haven't received the report. But judging from the articles in the Daily Maverick, there were 63 or 65 cases in question that the Disciplinary Advisory Committee was looking at. We've discerned which cases those are of the 63. We can report to you on the progress that we've made in the light of these processes that I described, that the department has been engaged in terms of monitoring and driving through disciplinary processes, including the cases that were previously being monitored by the Ministerial Disciplinary Advisory Committee. So of those, I'm just trying to get to my slide here quickly. Of those cases mentioned in the Daily Maverick, there were 63 cases, and 50 of those have been concluded as follows. 6 were finalized when the employees either resigned or retired. 3 were withdrawn due to a lack of evidence. 3 were found not guilty, and 38 cases have been, the officials have been found guilty through disciplinary processes. And the sanctions include a range of sanctions, including 4 dismissals, 10 suspensions without pay, 8 written warnings, final written warnings, 9 written warnings. Even though we haven't been able to get the report that was mentioned in the Daily Maverick article, all of those 65 cases are all part of the whole set of disciplinary cases related to financial misconduct that we are monitoring, and we are ensuring are taken through to completion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, DG. So yeah, it's great that the action you've taken, despite not getting the report. It's astounding that someone who was paid probably quite a considerable amount of money by the department and by the taxpayer has simply ignored requests for the report, which I would assume, and without evidence, that Daily Maverick has seen. It's astounding. I don't know what particular action you could take to get the report, but it seems that you've acted anyway without the report. But I just think it's astounding that that someone can just cock their snoot and say not respond. It's just who are we talking about? What is the name of this ex-chair?
Kabi Singh.
It's the former minister, Susan Shabangu. Thank you, Chair.
Why am I not surprised? Sorry. Right. Chairman, I'm not sure who's chairing the meeting at the moment, but it doesn't really matter because we've done very well. And now I'm going to be a little naughty, Minister.
I'm back. I've got network coverage for now, so I'm here.
Okay, that's fine. Just one last thing before my colleagues can take up the cudgels. Minister, we have a mutual friend who shares your Matlingwan surname, but that's not the point. We both KZN people, and I'm sure you are very aware of the vast water and sanitation issues in KZN as they are all over the country. And my colleagues and I spent some time in Masilonyana a couple of weeks ago. But I simply, for the last 15 years, we have battled to get the department, your department now, to act on a bulk water supply from the Spiernkop Dam to feed the desperately needed people needing water in the greater Ladysmith area of Driefontein and so on. Why is there such a delay? Your department approved the project in 2010, I'm told. The previous minister tried to fob me off that there were still feasibility studies when I submitted a written question. Why is that project not progressing and people having to live without water?
Perhaps, Chairperson, if I may ask our acting DDG for infrastructure to come in on this one. Leonardo, are you able to answer this one?
Thank you, DG. A bit of a hijack, ambush, I'm afraid, but it's such a critical issue.
Leonardo?
DG, I will just have to collect some information because I don't have all the information with me. If I just give 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. And DG, any progress on the board members and the other details? And then, Mr. Chair, if I could perhaps ask for your indulgence in terms of the copy of that report that the DG was reticent about closing to us because disciplinary processes are ongoing and and disclosing the names. And I know in the past we've insisted on such reports. So just the information on the board members, Tlatuza board, the other information about detailed on wasteful and irregular expenditure. DG, I'm considerably older than you, and I might forget some of the things we're waiting for, and the question of the report and the names.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I haven't seen any of my colleagues put up their hands or indicate that they're ready with information. So I would suggest, Chair, that we send you all of this information after the meeting. I think they're busy getting it all together now, and including the internal audit report. We'll send it to you all after the meeting, if that's fine with you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'm entirely happy with that. Thank you.
All right. Okay, that's fine. Suffice it to say that I still think we need to find another mechanism about these things that must be submitted, because they are found outside the meeting and therefore don't form part of the record in one way or the other. But it's fine if you're comfortable with that. It's okay. Colleagues, are there any, Mazaban, are you done? Okay. All right. Colleagues, are there any questions on your part?
Chairperson, may I ask a question?
Shoot,
the DG here. I just wanted to ask, if possible, in future, would it be possible for us to get the questions beforehand? Because then we can make sure that we've got all the relevant information with us in the meeting.
No, you must have all the information pertinent to your space, because we are conducting this as a hearing. So it's on all matters related to what's before you. Our expectation is that everything is at your fingertips, and beyond that, with the benefit of working from home or working from offices in the virtual world, you've got access to the information. What needs to be submitted will be submitted after. It's perfectly in order. Right? Honorable Mente.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I'm not sure if I'm the only person who did not get comfort with the answer on the water tankers. I would like us to get proper information on the issue of the water tankers, because it started way back, and then in 2020 it became worse. Parts of KZN, parts of Eastern Cape and Limpopo, there were issues of water tankers, and water tankers that were paid for were nowhere to be found. And for the department not to give us proper information and thorough in terms of how many water tankers did the department procure, how many reached the people, and how many are unaccounted for, and what's being done about that. And then the second part of my question is the issue of SIU and the department in relation to Guyani matter. I'm not hearing what's happening. It's just like the one of Amatola and the SIU. I'm not sure if the department is aware of how a hearing is conducted, but the answers are very vague. Can we get them properly and thorough, please? Thank you.
Okay, can we get a response to the matters Honorable Mente is raising insofar as water tankers are concerned?
Yes, thanks, Chairperson. I suggest that we provide a full report with the full detail of how many tanks were provided, etc., to which municipalities, that we'll provide the committee with that report. On the issue of the SIU investigation related to Guyani, we do have information available now on that. It's part of our presentation that we submitted to the committee. Ntabi Singh, would you like to just talk to that issue, to our slides covering the SIU investigations related to Guyani?
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the Guyani, As we are aware that the contract was awarded irregularly, and there is a company that is been implicated, which is LTE. The matter is at the court right now. The SIU have issued the summons, and the civil litigation action was to set the contract aside, and the official that is implicated in that is the former CE of Lepelle. The matter is being set down for the hearing in October, and the pensions of the CE has been withheld. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any further questions, Honorable Mentor?
Yes, Chair. And what happened to the monies that have been paid already? Are we getting monies back, or we have just lost all the money that have been paid so far, except for those funds that the court said they must not be processed? I think, Chair, in the former parliament, those monies were stopped in 2018 or 19, but already there was a huge sum of money being paid to the project of Guyane, to all the companies that were involved. So how far is the process of getting the money back?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the civil recoveries that are in place, we have not yet received the money as yet, but the process of recovery is ongoing. The amount that we have received in relation to I mean, the amount that we are potential to have to recover, it's related to the Vuane pipeline, to the amount of 95 million. But with regard to the Guyane one, the processes of litigations are in progress. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Colleagues, are there any further issues? Honorable Liz.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the indulgence. I know I've had a lot of time, but there was one point that I just failed to pick up in terms of the contingent liabilities listed on page 431 of the annual report. There are two contingent liabilities of concern there. The first is Old Mutual Insurer Bow, which is 223.7 million, which was there in the 2020 report, is still there in 2021 report. And it relates, I see in the notes, to damages due to fire. And then there's the surface preparations, equipment and coatings, contingent liability of 130 million, which has popped up in the year under review. Can we be told a little bit more about these and whether those liabilities have since become costs?
Franz?
Thanks, Mr.
Yeah, I think DG, the amounts haven't been converted into cost as yet. They are still at the litigation stage, and if DG allows that, the legal services assist me with the background and status of those, but certainly they are not yet as cost on our books.
Impo, you're in the meeting. You want to add?
Thank you very much, DG. As the CFO has actually indicated, DG, I mean, these matters are still at a litigation stage. However, the spec matter, we've actually since entered into a settlement agreement. However, there is another litigation regarding the same thing. So they keep on bringing litigation. But this matter was finalized, but to the extent that we still have to deal with the issues relating to cost, it has not been finalized. Hence, it must remain in the contingency liability. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just quickly follow up question? So if it's been finalized, when we talk about costs, in other words, not legal costs, it's a conversion from a liability to an actual cost. So if it's been settled, there's some sort of settlement, but there's a dispute about legal costs, then that's something separate. What was the settlement?
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. The dispute was centered around the contract that was initially awarded to SPEC. So there were issues that actually SPEC took the department to court, but as a result of that, then we had to actually agree in terms of the issues that were in dispute. And hence I say that there was a settlement. So we can be able to retrieve that settlement and then provide the committee.
So, Chairperson, our legal services head is suggesting that we'll provide the detail of the settlement amount along with the other information after the meeting.
All right, that is fine. Yeah, all right, no, that is fine. We will get that. I just want to raise a matter because I think it is indicative of the challenges that we face in this space. In that whilst we may be dealing with historic matters, there continues to be a case of deja vu in the current realities confronting all of us insofar as water is concerned. And here I'm referring specifically to a matter that in passing Honorable Liz has touched on. We were in Macelonyane municipality in the Free State some 3 weeks ago on a matter which was referred to us by the NCOP. And coincidentally, it was a matter, the municipality was on our radar in any case. So we went there and we visited one of the sites where they are refurbishing the water treatment works plant. And the Department of Water and Sanitation came in as an intervention with the request of the municipality, and you contracted Bloom Water to be implemented there. So this is us 3 weeks ago. We get there, and I'm going to try and summarize, and I'm going to paint the picture so that my question is within the context with which what we saw. There was 2 workers there of the contractor. There was 1 staged appearance of a yellow plant, and we asked what was going on, and we were told that the contractor left site because he had not been paid. And when we interacted with the workers there, they told us that they'd been told to come in because the committee would be visiting. But ordinarily, they have not been on site since June 2022. When Honorable Hadebe specifically asked about the cost of the yellow plant, it immediately left the site. So that's the background. We then had an interaction with officials, well, including officials of Bloom Water in Macelonyane, who arrived and said that there's no such thing, that the contractor has left because he has not been paid and that the contractor has not been there since June. They were at pains to dismiss the assertions that we made. The municipality then produced a report, which when we read from, the officials of Bloem Water owned that report and said that the information in any case that is being presented is theirs. On closer scrutiny of that report, the report then confirmed that there'd been no work since June. They then backtracked and said that there's some errors in that report. Why I raise this? The extent of corruption taking place in the water space and a brazen defiance or dismissal of observations of the committee self by officials, and then when we probe them. So all I'm saying is, I hope I'm bringing this to the attention of the department to look at that. But we found the conduct and behavior of the Bloem Water officials to be absolutely inconsistent with the truth. And the challenge is that they are acting on your behalf. You are pumping money there, they are acting on your behalf. And the project management and contract management, it was just a total mess. And I'm not sure now of how many of these incidences are a repeat reality across the country. But it left a very bitter and sour taste in our mouths to say, these are the kind of officials we are dealing with. So I just thought I should present that to you here to say, this is indicative of what we have seen before, and it continues. So it's either the consequence management is not far-reaching enough, or you've got an element of people in the water space who actually don't care or are committed to their commitment of corruption and undermining the due processes of the law and just the basics of service delivery. And this was in our presence. So colleagues, I'm trying to summarize it. If I leave anything out insofar as just that one incident which we stumbled upon on our watch, putting aside the greater water challenges which exist in that particular part of the country, but the conduct of those officials told us that we are far from being out of the woods insofar as pushing back on the frontiers of corruption in the space of water is concerned. So that's the first issue I want to raise. If there's a comment on it, it's fine. If it's noted, that's also okay. Then I'll move on to my second issue.
Chairperson, we'll investigate that project in Masilonyana, and we'll provide you with a report. And yes, you are correct. We still do have problems across the board as the department, with the water boards and with municipalities, with contract management and infrastructure procurement. As the minister indicated, there's a huge amount of work that we need to do to improve our contract management and our procurement, both to make sure that it isn't corrupt, but also to make sure that it's efficient and effective, and that we appoint competent contractors, the best contractors that are available, and get good value for money. So those are all priorities for us that we're working on. We've developed an infrastructure procurement strategy in terms of National Treasury's framework for infrastructure delivery and procurement management. And we're going to be trying to make our infrastructure procurement much more sophisticated and better quality in future, so that we get better results. But we'll investigate fully this particular project, Masilonyana, and we'll send you a report, Chair.
No, that's fine. I'm sure. Thanks, DJ. Our secretariat will also provide you with the exact details in terms of specific project name and so on and so forth, insofar as that is concerned. The second point, Minister, is that on quite a number of occasions, when Honorable Mentor, is that a new hand or a historic hand? I assume it's a historic hand.
No, Chair, it's a new hand, Chair, but
Okay,
I
Chair.
don't mean to interrupt you.
No, proceed.
I don't mean to interrupt you. There is some sense of laissez-faire attitude. Is the DG saying the issue of Masilonyana was never known to them? Then, Minister, if that's the case, we are facing a far bigger problem than the problem we think we see. It's a disaster. If the department in the DG's office, there is no DDG or projects around the country who on a daily basis is keeping up with what's happening with the money which we have appropriated and allocated to different projects. In particular, the Free State, where residents, even from Kwakwa, they still don't have water when they have been promised water. So for me, Chair, I think we must get a better approach or a better response from the office of the highest official in the department to say we will investigate that. It means that that matter was not even an issue within the department. They are not aware of what the implementing municipalities are doing with the money they have appropriated and sent from the department. I'm not comfortable with that, Chair. It's very problematic for me.
Okay. Let's get the report from them, noting what you have said, because quite clearly it was also an observation of the committee insofar contract management is concerned and the transfers and the work that entities do on behalf of the department is concerned. I think it's a space and area that we will look at.
Chairperson.
And then stand by, DG. It is still a matter that we need to look at for us. But given the dire situation at Masilonyane, I think maybe Honorable Mento, you are right in that the department should probably be aware of it, right? DG?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I just wanted to say that we are regularly monitoring the expenditure of all the grant money that we give to municipalities, including those managed by implementing agents such as Bloom Water. We do have a report on this particular project, which from Bloom Water, which indicates all the detail of the work done to date and overall progress. What we want to investigate is this worrying report that you're giving us, Chairperson, that you were given conflicting information by officials from Bloom Water and the municipality, and we want to get to the bottom of that and then come back to you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, sure, that's fine. We will await that report. Here's the second matter, and I think it is probably just now beyond a general observation. It's become commonplace. And it is around the issue of the provision of water through water tankers. The communities will from time to time have a challenge of water. Let me make an example closer to home. I stay in a rural village called Mfume in eThekwini. We have got water infrastructure there. There's even house connections. But we can go on for a month, 2 months without water reaching us. And when you inquire, is that, there's a problem with the water station, water pump, or whatever. And then you go to another community, they say there's sabotage, there's this, there's that. Now, wherever you go, there's a proliferation of water tankers anchored in tendering, and therefore the suspicion for corruption is certainly not lost. So what I'm trying to determine is that the department investigating or working with law enforcement agencies on the issue of investigating what I can only call now an organized crime or syndicate of water tanker providers who will go out of business if people receive water directly from the water infrastructure that's there. Because you are getting all sorts of claims about sabotage, but no one is hearing anything about investigations. And this is prevalent throughout the country and is costing millions and billions of rands, on top of the fact that these water tanker drivers are charging people money in certain communities to get water. The water routes are inconsistent. The frequency of the provision of water is inconsistent. And literally communities are at the hands or at the mercy of these water tanker providers. It is so whether an investigation or intelligence reports or what, but it can't be that the country is held to ransom by what is happening right now, water tanker providers. So I'm really, I just thought it would be problematic of me or directional if I don't raise this. Because simply put, the resistance of the water tanker providers is prevalent and it's evident for everybody to see. So I would really want to know if you're not investigating or whether you've not received reports, why is that? Because the extent of the corruption which is taking place in these water tankering tendering space, it leaves very little to be desired. So I just want to place that as an overarching issue, which is in itself causing a fundamental problem to access to water and the provision of water.
Come in, Chair.
DG, yes, you can.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are aware of the problem. We're also very concerned about it. Our preference is not for water tankers. We are only providing water tankers in emergency situations ourselves, and it is our view that water tankers are not a good solution for various reasons, including the ones that you've mentioned. We're also aware of the corruption problem, and as you say, the fact that there are reports that some tanker operators are even vandalizing municipal water infrastructure so that they can continue to provide water tankering services. The approach that we are taking is, of course, continuously emphasizing the need to fight corruption at municipal level and collaborating wherever we get reports with the law enforcement agencies. But under the minister's leadership and the deputy minister's leadership, we've also become much more active in terms of our involvement in municipalities and water services than the department was in previous years. And we are now every week on the ground in various municipalities. Under the minister's leadership, we're focusing in those municipalities where water and sanitation challenges are most severe. We haven't yet gotten to all the municipalities, but we are intervening now in approximately 20 municipalities around the country in various forms, sometimes through Section 63 interventions, or together with COGTA with a 139 intervention, but also sometimes just in the form of going with the minister and the minister getting the municipality to agree on an improvement plan and an action plan to address a range of issues, including this kind of issue and securing infrastructure that it can't be vandalized, but also to make sure that proper water and sanitation services are provided so that water tankers don't have to be used, and so that the existing water infrastructure where it's dysfunctional is made functional. Thank you, Chair.
I hear that, DG, but what I'm asking is that quite clearly we are saddled with the syndicate here of organized crime of sabotaging state infrastructure. And it is ongoing on a daily basis. And so my question is the matter receiving attention insofar as investigation is concerned, including but not limited to collaboration with law enforcement agencies? That I think that's where the nub of the matter is, because we continue to have these instances of water interruptions and destruction to property and infrastructure, vandalism and sabotage. But nobody's investigated, and therefore nobody will get arrested, and therefore the criminal syndicate continues on its work. It's the same thing that is going on with PRASA infrastructure, the railway infrastructure. So, there's a syndicate, and so on. But there's no consequence management, there's no investigation. So I think the question I'm trying to really drive at is how this matter must be taken forward. Because this tendering system, insofar as these water tankers is concerned, is a headache across the spectrum. It's across the country. I was just making an example with where I come from. Just that the water tanker that they bring to my area doesn't even come to my part of the village. The only saving grace is that we've got a smaller nyana baki, so slaisha impongolo ne ipakpaku sambe siwafuna manzi mpuleni nasemathangeni lekho. But not everybody can afford to do that. So that's the question I'm really saying, Uti. I suppose maybe even state security would have to help us here on that. Minister, I note your hand. Before you come, can I just take Honorable Mendes? I think she wants to build up on this, and then the minister will come in.
Thank you, Chair. Now, I just wanted to say, Chair, Ngakamudiri Mulema municipality, the mayor informed us in our meeting when we went for the floods in Tswaying that water provision in the case of disruption is done at the office. Provisions are insourced. There is no tendering for whatever water tankering or anything. The municipality has procured trucks and water tankers and distribute water as and when it's necessary. And for them, it kept exactly what Chair is talking about, the sabotage. There's no one who's sabotaging the infrastructure of water in Ngakamudiri anymore, because no one is going to get business out of it. Is the minister aware of that? And are they thinking of being the very same thing of insourcing all water provisions?
We're betting to hear you. Your connection is failing you, but I think the nub of the issue you are raising is about insourcing. I think that's what I heard.
Not outsource any of these things, because many people in the sabotage are working with officials. And at the very same time, this has become a business which is lucrative to criminals. And
Honorable Mentor, we are really battling to hear you. All right. Honorable Minister.
Just make a few points on the point that you, Honorable Chair, are making, and I'm sure, which is a concern to other members of SCOPA and is a major concern to ourselves. The first statement is this, that it is a generally known fact in South Africa, and I'm sure in Parliament, but certainly in Cabinet, that we have declining local government in South Africa with regard to provision of basic services. It's declining. And in some cases already declined, and in some cases, almost municipalities are non-functional, generally speaking. It's a known fact. Even SALCA know this. They raise issues of legislative provisions that deprive municipalities for what is due to them, and therefore they can't perform that. All of those arguments, but the bottom line is that municipal services with regard to basic provision of these services has declined. Now, water is not an exception. Water and sanitation is not an exception. We now know, I'm sure more than half of municipalities in the country, that they are underperforming, or in some cases not performing at all with regard to water and sanitation. Now, one of the things that is part of the element of this failure to provide water and sanitation services, one of the elements is capacity. Another element is general poverty in the country, where people generally are not able to collect. But closer home, it is corruption. Closer home, it is lack of billing, collection, just lack of efficiencies with regard to running water and sanitation services in each municipality. Now, let me focus on water tankering. Now, in some cases, water tankering has become an official corruption field, kind of a syndicate, legitimatized in some cases by mayors themselves, or some people in ESCOs and municipalities, but also it involves those who are in these services, those who are providing services. If you buy tankers as an individual company, up to 30 of those tankers, surely we are going to want to recoup your money, and you are going to want a job for them rather than just having them parked somewhere. It would be a worry to you, even if you pay them cash. It will be a worry to you that they are just standing there. So it's something that is, you can't be spot on in all cases throughout the country, because it is officialized by not providing water infrastructure and therefore water services to communities, and then provide these tankers under the guise that these people are desperate for water, but you don't have a plan. Even if you are given 5 years, there's no plan. Now, what then are we doing or are saying, as one was saying, it's going to be difficult for us to be expected as a Department of Water and Sanitation to play the role of local government on corruption generally and provision of basic services generally. We are focused on water and sanitation. And what we are saying is that incrementally, we are not going to allow these grants, which in our view have been abused for a long time in some cases, to be used for hiring, providing tankers to communities, unless there is a storm or some emergency of one kind or the other. Let me just make an example. One of the municipalities in the country have had sudden eruption of activism on the part of communities demanding water. Now, if a local mayor and a district mayor who is a water service authority can provide answers in order to calm down those fires, the likelihood is that they are going to say, we're going to give you tankered water. But in most of the time, they have run out of money to provide those tankering services. So it will be a day or two. And then the demand is going to be thrown to us nationally to intervene. Obviously, what do? We say if communities are proven not to have water, not just now, but for a long time, but they reach a point where it is they can't stand it. So you may then say, our attitude is that do away with tankering, even in such circumstances, but focus on piped water, invest there. The other images you can consider at least is boreholing, but boreholing is also a problem because it then provides water on a communal basis for which nobody pays. You can say to the municipalities, pay for equipment and sustenance thereof, electricity and so on. But you are not sure of that. And you can't give boreholes to all villages and so on. So certainly piped water is much more a favorite on our side, and then can be followed by boreholing, but tankering just for days when people will really see that they are desperate and so on. So generally, want to appeal to SCOPA to say, let's get united on this matter to say, let's not encourage tankering for various reasons that are of concern here. And we are unable to investigate because we're going to become invested. You have seen how full of dockets we are on our own. And there are recent cases like Umhlatuze in the board and so on. So already our hands are full in terms of investigations. We are discouraging ourselves against more. And therefore, but let's just discourage, and on our side, we want to channel our grants towards piped water, which is sustainable, which is better in terms of investment going forward. With regard to Ngaka Molema Molema is something that we can follow up, but we know that there's an outstanding meeting between ourselves and the mayor there. I'm sure that matter is on the agenda when we get to a meeting situation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Minister, for that response. I take the part where you say there needs to be working together in discouraging this, but I think we will have to look at it much more closely with COGTA as well in the issues of capacity that you are referring to, because that's another challenge which cannot be overlooked, capacity at municipal level. So, but colleagues, are there any other matters that you'd like to raise? All right, let me conclude by saying I'm advised that there was an agreement on the following issues when I had the connectivity technicality caused by ESCOM's load shedding. We are in the 100th day of load shedding today this year. And it just boggles the mind how the status quo remains as it is. So we would deal with the main account, the TCTA, and the full list of irregular expenditure, the completed cases. We are still to deal with war on leaks. And then there will be other issues which the department will submit to us and submitted to us by the SIU. The reality is that, Minister, when the 5th Parliament ended, unfortunately, one was in Scopa in the 5th Parliament. There was a week-long session with the Department of Water. So I'm not surprised, and I'm sure Honorable Mente as well, who was there with us at the end of that one, Honorable Liz had moved to finance. I'm not surprised at the extent of the problems that you have enumerated, because I can tell you that there was a glaring dishonesty insofar as the answers that were provided by officials. They would wait, one would wait to hear what the other one is saying and then calculate how they should respond in order to cover themselves. It was a shocker to watch. So it may tell us the extent of the problem and is indicative of why we are where we are so far as these matters are concerned. So we welcome the interventions which have resulted in the SIU investigating these matters, and say that we've got a list of projects that we want to visit as a committee as soon as the parliamentary program allows for committees to undertake oversight. So with that, I'm saying water in this new normal or new semblance of normality which prevails will now be a prominent feature of our work, because as I indicated earlier on, we were simply constrained by COVID. So we will continue with our interactions on the long list of issues that are there. And to say our particular focus is, of course, on consequence management, project management, and ensuring that the public money reaches the people insofar as service delivery is concerned. So colleagues, if I may leave it at that on our behalf, thank the Minister and the DG. Thank you, colleagues. SIU, AG, thank you for being here. DG, all the documents and submissions that need to be made. I know that you said after the meeting, but we are generally quite nice people here, our reputation notwithstanding. And if we can receive those documents close of business on Friday, so that you can collate properly and ensure that the documents that we receive go through the necessary processes of quality check. So Friday close of business, if we can receive all those documents, it's just consistent with our niceness. Minister, can I give you an opportunity to make concluding remarks if there are any on your side, and then we'll bring the meeting to an end.
Thank you very much, Chair. Umajalo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Colleagues, are you all good? Do you fine?
We are covered, Lalo Sebo.
I'm not fine, but thank you to the department, and we really look forward to great improvements.
Yeah, no, I think, colleagues, we will have meetings. We are working towards physical meetings, the constraints of space notwithstanding in Parliament, and the processes in place on how to access whatever space is there for further engagements. And I'm sure the department will be joining us on the oversights that we'll be undertaking as soon as the time allows. So I think the engagement is ongoing today. Honorable Adebe, thanks for your assistance earlier on, and Honorable Liz, thanks for leading us today. Colleagues, on that note, if there's nothing else, the meeting stands adjourned.
Long live the chair.
Thank you, Chair.
I receive.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live the committee.
Chair.